Morning, ladies and gentlemen. Ladies and gentlemen, esteemed colleagues and distinguished guests, it's with great pleasure and honor that I welcome you all to this esteemed conference, 5th edition of Africa's Future Beyond Age International Conference and Academic Excellence Award 2024. I am thrilled to see such diverse and knowledgeable group gathered here to engage in intellectual discourse and scholarly exchange. This conference provides a forum for researchers across various disciplines to present and discuss current research for policymaking and industrial development, field advancement, and practices in Africa. The Academic Excellence Award is the highest academic honor granted by NUGS-CHINA, aimed to reward members who have been diligent in their studies with respect to coursework and research. Please join me in exchanging a warm welcome to Professor Benjamin Kugler Brown. We are deeply grateful for your presence and leadership, and we look forward to engaging in productive conference under your guidance again. I am your MC for today, Millicent Selassie Apenya, and my co-MC is Godfred Bentu. Thank you once again for joining us, and I wish you all a productive and fulfilling conference experience. We'll start with an opening prayer from Munawa. Thank you. Mrs. Munawa present at the moment?
Shall we pray? Shall we pray? Father, we thank you for this evening. We thank you for a time like this in your presence, oh God. Father, we commit tonight's program into your hands, oh God. Even as you saw us do yesterday, we commit tonight's program also into your hands. Have your way in our midst, oh God, and we pray that by the time we leave here, oh God, we would have gained knowledge, oh God, that in the end, Africa will be beyond aid. This we ask and pray with so much thanksgiving. Amen.
Amen. Thank you. Please change your name, your username on the Zoom to your actual name, your official name. And also, please scan the QR code to register for the conference. Okay. Thanks, Munara, for that prayer. Okay, so moving forward to the agenda for today, we have amazing speakers in our midst. And to introduce the first speaker, we have Miss Laurentia.
Okay.
Miss Laurentia?
Yes, please. Thank you. So for our guest speaker, we have Professor Mrs. Goski Alabi. Professor Mrs. Goski Alabi is a full professor and one of Africa's leading experts in quality management and leadership, and co-founder and president of Lawe University College, Accra. Professor Mrs. Alabi is an academician, consultant, and an accomplished entrepreneur and author with more than 15 years of professional experience in academia, consultancy, regulation, advocacy, and business. Professor Mrs. Alabi serves on several public, corporate, and international boards and committees. He is the president of African Council for Distance Education, the chair of the African Network for Internationalization of Education, the West Africa representative of the Executive Board of the African Council for Distance Education, that is from March 2017, Ghana's representative to the Codex Alimentarius Committee on Contaminants in Foods, that is 2015 to date, member of the team of experts of the African Quality Rating Mechanism of the African Union, Union Commission 2015 and a member of the ISO Technical Committee on Consumer Policy. That's from July 2014 to date. She's also a certified member of the Europe, Africa, Caribbean Liaison Committee, Interprofessional Association, among many others. Professor Mrs. Alabi was the Dean of the Center for International Education and Collaboration. Prior to that appointment, he served as the founding Dean of School of Graduate Studies at the University of Professional Studies. Please, can you? Organizer. Okay. Professor Mrs. Alabi was the Dean of the Center for International Education and Collaboration. Prior to the appointment, he served as the founding Dean of School of Graduate Studies at the University of Professional Studies, Accra, from 2009 to 2016, starting from 0 to about 1,000 students in 6 years, with 9 distinct graduate programs. Professor Mrs. Alabi is a chemist and educationist with a BSc in chemistry and a diploma in education from the University of Cape Coast, a food scientist with an MPhil in food science from the University of Ghana. Professor Goski has a Doctor of Business Administration from the Swiss Management Center and a PhD in Business Administration by the Central University of Nicaragua. He has over 70 scholarly journal publications, books, conference, and technical papers. Indeed, I think the profile says it all. So we are blessed to have you, Professor Mrs. Goski Alabi. Please, your audience are ready for you. Thank you very much.
Hello.
Hello.
Hello. Yes, and thank you all very much for the invite. If you will allow me, I would like to share my screen. Yep. Can you see my screen, please?
Yes, we can.
Yes,
Okay.
we can.
Okay, so I have to start the presentation. Okay, just a sec. So slideshow and current slide. Okay, thank you very much and congratulations for a very good job done, NUGS-CHINA. It is an honor for me to be invited by you to speak on harnessing Africa's future for sustainable development, and in particular, how we can empower the next generation. I think that this couldn't have been at a better time than now. Your theme is most timely because we have, hello? Hello?
Prof,
Please, we can hear you. We can hear
Okay,
you.
perfect. I have something blocking my screen. I'm sorry about that. Okay, sorry. Because we have, for this year, 2024, Africa declaring Africa's Year of Education. So it is right on the nail, the head of the nail, that you're organizing this conference this year. And most particularly because China happens to have taken a lead in digital education, where we're hosting now the World Digital Education Alliance. I congratulate you once again. So my presentation is going to give a brief overview of the importance of sustainable development in Africa, how we can harness the potential for sustainable development, and the role, your own role in doing this. I think you've heard the statistics over and again, but permit me to reiterate. without necessarily being so pessimistic. We have had the narrative of Africa being one characterized by poverty. And I don't think that we need to shy away from that, because that is the reality. If we can speak truth to ourselves, then we can reflect and be able to make change where change is needed. Our narrative is one that has been characterized by inequality, where the few political elite and the business leaders sometimes skew the resources that are not even properly managed to their advantage, leaving the bulk of our people in dire need. We cannot say that we have paid adequate attention to climate change. And of course, the lack of access to basic services is least to mention. In the areas of natural resources management, Africa has not done so well, considering the huge endowment of what we have. Indeed, I have always said that personally, I tend to disagree with Ali Mazrui when he says that if necessity is the mother of invention, abundance is the mother of inertia. But to a very large extent, when we look at the state of Africa's development, we tend to side with him. We have so much that we are so comfortable that we are not pushing ourselves to the limit to make a change for our people. We have abundant sunshine, and yet renewable energy is an issue. As I speak to you now in Ghana, we have the situation that we have codenamed Dumso, lights on and off. At the same time, I was surprised to realize that we have a similar situation in South Africa when I visited Joburg in January this year. So by and large, this is characteristic of many of our African countries south of the Sahara. We do not seem to produce enough to ensure food security for our own people. And in terms of infrastructural development, we have had a situation where indeed we are being looked down upon because our infrastructural development is not really much to write home about. So these are really critical issues. But is our education and healthcare system really working for us? And why not? It has been reported that the Human Capital Index score for Sub-Saharan Africa in 2022 was about 0.4%. And that suggests that children that are born to the region on average will only be 40% productive when they grow up, if even they enjoyed complete education and full health. And this is by the World Bank. It appears clearly that our leadership has failed us. And often, when I talk about our leadership failing us, a lot of us believe that it is the leaders who have failed us. But leadership is not what leaders alone do to bring about change. It is what the leaders and the members, we the people, we do together to bring about the necessary and constructive change that we so well desire together. So the question is, what have you as an individual been doing to hold the leadership of our countries accountable. And what has NUGS-CHINA been doing to hold the leadership of our various countries or Ghana accountable? And what has NUGS Secretariat in Ghana done to ensure that they are holding our leaders accountable for the resources that we have entrusted in their care to ensure that we have leadership? Indeed, for many of us, leadership is being a spectatorship for the members. We, the members, are spectators. We are not involved in the leadership process, and yet we turn around and blame our leaders. We need to blame ourselves as well. And I was talking to a group of professors some time ago who were blaming the development of Europe. And they said, well, are we not aware that it's where our own forefathers who were hauled to Europe with our gold to develop the resources that they have? And I said, bravo. Probably the leaders and the people of Europe at the time had a plan for their development, and they knew the resources that they required, and they recognized that they could obtain some of those resources in Africa. So they came to look for our gold, but they found more than gold. They found people, cheap labor, and they took us to help them develop their economies, not only in Europe, but also in Americas. So the question I ask is, what are we, the people that were left behind? The people that were left behind with the resources that were left behind, what did they do with it? And what are we, the people living today, doing to make a difference for ourselves and for the generations to come? I believe that it is high time that we stopped blaming only our leaders and blaming our plight on imperialism, and turn to our own selves and ask ourselves, how are we contributing to the leadership and the betterment of our continent? So these are just a few of the challenges that we could look into, because if we cannot dissect the problem as it currently is, we cannot devise the solutions. According to UNESCO, over 30% of children in sub-Saharan Africa are out of school. And youth literacy rates are way lower compared to other regions. Youth unemployment is a pressing issue across Africa, with youth unemployment rates exceeding 20% in many of the countries. Underemployment and informal employment are also common amongst the youth, and that is according to the ILO. Now, how do we change the situation? We probably need to look inward, and I think we need to reinvent our education, our educational system, to respond to the current needs. We cannot put no wine in old wine skins and expect that it would hold. They are likely to burst. And so in the fourth industrial revolution, is the current educational system that we have working for us? And if it is not working for us, then there is the need to address that situation so we can achieve the Africa Agenda 2063, which is enacting the Africa that we want and achieve sustainable development. So I'd like to call on you to push for a change. So let's look at Africa's development dividends. The youth is our potential, and the youth has the potential to innovate and drive both economic and social progress in Africa. It is said that Africa has the youngest population in the world, with over 60% of its population under the age of 25. Not over, is under. The population growth of Africa is also rapid, and it is considered approximately to be about 2.5%. And by 2050, it is expected that Africa's population will double, reaching over 2.5 billion people. And I think this is a statistic that you have heard over and again during this conference. But for me, what is striking is the fact that by 2030, which is very close, just about 16 years from now, no, 15 years from now, Africa's working age population, that is between 15 to 60%, is expected to surpass that of China and India. And this for me is very instructive. It means that if the youth of Africa should be properly positioned, Africa would be a superhouse. However, if we are not able to do that effectively, then it would become a weapon that could strike Africa worse than what we have at the moment. Now, there is still hope for Africa's demographic dividends, in my opinion. And what is that? The first is the entrepreneurial drive of the African people, of the African youth. Africa's youth are increasingly turning to entrepreneurship as a means of employment and income generation, because the jobs are not there. Our governments are not able to, to provide us with the jobs that we need. And indeed, the governments cannot continue to create public, white-collar jobs for us. It is our over-reliance on white-collar jobs which is causing the unemployment that we have in Africa. And so, rightly so, entrepreneurship is the key. But how are we doing it? And it is said that over 80% of Africa's working age population is engaged in the informal sector, with many young people starting their own businesses. But do they have the requisite skills to really drive their entrepreneurial initiatives in a sustainable manner? Do they have the skills to do that? In addition, are our governments creating the enabling environment for our team and youth to take advantage of entrepreneurship and thrive? It has been reported, for example, in Ghana, that many of the new businesses that are established get collapsed and fold down before they are 5 years old. More than 70% of that. So how can we use this kind of statistic to rely on entrepreneurship to drive the kind of sustainable change, the change that looks beyond aid for Africa? Again, in the fourth industrial revolution, we are looking at digital capabilities, we're looking at digital skills, we're looking at digital connectivity. And so to what extent are Africa's youth embracing technology. Indeed, the good news is that Africa's youth are embracing technology at a very rapid pace, with the continent experiencing a digital revolution. Mobile phone penetration rates are among the highest in the world, providing opportunities for innovation, entrepreneurship, and access. Indeed, mobile money or mobile banking facilities is believed to have gained roots in Africa, starting with M-Pesa in Kenya. Now, when you go to different parts of Africa, I mean, mobile banking is a thing to reckon with. It means that we have our own. And when we look at shining examples of many of the youth in Africa, the fact that even we have the Elon Musk, who is a South African, who could turn a lot of things in the world around with his innovation, means that Africa beams with a lot of innovative potentials. And that is what we need to tap into. But we need to do that with an entrepreneurial mindset. So how do we harness the talent? It is clear that the kind of education that we have inherited from the colonial masters is not working for us. And we need to change it so we can find our own voices and have that strength to sit around the table and negotiate beyond aid. Because when our strength and our relevance is not recognized in the world economies and in the scholarship of the world, our voice will be dwarfed as a continent as it is right now. And we have seen the kind of things happening around the continent. We've seen DRC, we've seen what is happening in Sudan right now. We have seen Niger, we have seen Mali, we have seen Burkina Faso. And what has been the role of the African Union, of ECOWAS, of the various regional bodies in standing with our own to ensure that we have a voice to push forward for an Africa beyond aid, for harnessing the potential of the youth. And so I believe that we need to start focusing and looking at what is in our hands. What is it that we have? And whatsoever we have, we need not look down upon it. We need to build that confidence in ourselves, in our abilities, in our capabilities, because indeed we are capable, and we have proven it over and again that yes, we can do big things. So what we have in our hands at the moment is what our people are doing in the informal sector, employing themselves. And so the first thing we can do to really turn around the index, the human capital index of Africa, is first to recognize prior learning. We need not look down on any individual and what that individual is doing, irrespective of where that individual is and irrespective of the educational background of that individual. Because at best, our education right now is focused on certification and not on learning, not on skills, not on attitudes, not on capabilities. And that is what we have to focus on the skills, on the attitudes, and on our own capabilities and our belief in ourselves. So we need to recognize prior learning. Whether the person learned whatever the person learned from the classroom, or learned it on the job, or learned it at home, or learned it in the streets. We must have a system of recognizing that knowledge and giving credit to that knowledge so that that person can use it to move on in life. If we need to teach the people entrepreneurship, it mustn't be artificial in the classroom. We need to teach the people entrepreneurship in a way that responds directly to what they are doing, to what they know, and what is responsive to the needs of the labor market. And therefore, to do that, African governments need to start looking at work-based learning opportunities. It also means that as a continent, as countries, we need qualification frameworks that provide alternative pathways to people to enhance themselves. It also means that we need to start recognizing micro-credentials, that I can choose to learn whatever I want to learn online, acquire that skill, and be recognized. I mean, that micro-credential should enable me to proceed and progress to get the kind of qualification I want to move on. We also would need a credit transfer and recognition of qualifications across the continent to facilitate labor and skills mobility as well as skills transfer. We also need to find a way of harnessing the potential of those of you in the diaspora. What lessons can we learn from China and from India? How did they send their people out there to learn? How did they import skills and labor? How is it that today China is able to export cocoa while Ghana is falling back in its glory as a country, a leading country in the world when it comes to the export of cocoa? Because it's not only the skill that was imported to China, but it's also about issues that has to do with environmental sustainability issues in our own country. How is NUGS working to align with the African Continental Free Trade Agreement when it comes to the mobility of labor and skills and credit transfer across the continent? Are we taking our own due and making sure that we find our own place within the African Continental Free Trade Agreement for the purposes of labor and labor mobility? So there is a lot to gain if NUGS and NUGS-CHINA can start looking at advocacy in that regard. But of course, we need our governments, we need private sector, we need civil society and other international organizations to achieve the Sustainable Development Goals. And I think one of the things that I would like to call on NUGS and the All African Students Union to push for is to train our own young leaders in negotiation skills, international negotiation skills, so that when we take our own place in the leadership of our countries, we will be able to move beyond aid because it is about right negotiations. Look at what just happened in Niger. So the question I want to ask NUGS-CHINA is, what role can NUGS-CHINA play in supporting and promoting sustainable development in Africa? What opportunities exist for collaboration and engagement? And I think that one of the strongest places to start is China, because China has a lot to provide Africa. We have a lot to learn from them to make our own continent a continent that is beyond aid. So in conclusion, I want to say that the key to moving beyond aid is empowering our youth. And to do that, we need to invest in the education, not the current education that we have, but education that is relevant and functional and comparable. Education that is recognized as well. We need to invest in their health and well-being, and most crucially, we need to unlock Africa's demographic dividends. Policies and programs that promote youth employment, skills development, and access to quality education are essential for harnessing the potential of the African youth. The call to action is one, NUGS-CHINA starts now. And I believe that you start looking at your own individual and the collective contribution in contributing to sustainable development in the 4 IRI and the fourth industrial revolution. I also believe that your conference is not only going to come out with a communique that is based on resolutions, because that is what we see all the time, but it's going to be an action plan that works towards the achievement of our Agenda 2063 and a sustainable development, an Africa that will truly move beyond aid. You, the youth, need to take leadership for the change that we desire and to push until you see the requisite change. You need to take leadership first by seeking accountability from the leaders who may not be providing the needed environment for the development that we need. Thank you all very much for putting this timely conference together. Thank you, NUGS-CHINA. Long live NUGS-CHINA. Long live NUGS. Long live the All African Students Union. Thank you once again, and that is my contact information. Thank you. Questions and contributions, please.
Thank you, Prof. That's a nice talk.
Thank you, Professor. As an old student of UPSA, I've always admired you, Professor Goski Alabi. We are truly fortunate to have you grace this conference with your experience and expertise. We need to build ourselves to turn around our human capital index, empower our youth to invest in education, and we should also seek accountability from our leaders. Thank you for sharing your expertise and insights with us today, Professor Alabi.
Thank you.
So we have another speaker again, and the second speaker will be introduced by Honorable Bernard.
Thank you, MC. Respected Prof. Chair, I would like to stand on the protocols already established and execute my assignment. Our next speaker is a graduate of the University of Wisconsin-Madison in the USA. He had a double undergrad majoring in wildlife ecology and minoring in chemistry. Over his period of active life, he has been a businessman and an economist. Within a period of 42 years, Some of the things he has found himself doing are in the areas of building. He has served as a city administrator. He has served his people and the world as a public speaker, and he has defended the liberty of humanity. He's also a retired tools salesman. Our speaker is a voracious reader of politics, economics, and history. He played a utility role in a team that won a Nobel Prize in medicine. He's an avid outdoorsman. As an intelligent retiree, he likes to do gardening. He loves making wine. He loves to cook. And he's a good shooter, so he hunts. He equally loves to fish. There's definitely a lot that we can learn from our next speaker. So I will not take the sail out of his boat. Respected Chairman, ladies and gentlemen, may we invite to the mic Dr. Kenneth Van Doren. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Now, you might be wondering, what made me instrumental in earning that Nobel Prize for Mr. H. Goben Khurana? Well, I washed the lab instruments. And, in every business, there is the need for more sophisticated and also less sophisticated. But yes, I was indeed instrumental. Now, I want to correct the record a little bit. I do not have a PhD, but I figure I am an expert anyway. Why? In this era, an expert is somebody who knows more and more about less and less. And I've achieved the ultimate. I know everything there is to know about absolutely nothing at all. With that in mind, how do I hook up my presentation now? I need to get into my slides. Where are we? Here we are, share. Okay. Bear with me for just a second here as I, okay, that's a mess, but I need to pull it out. Boom, boom. Come on, Ken. There we are. Apologize for the delay here. This is not quite the smooth transition that I had anticipated and hoped for. Here we are. Desktop. Entire screen. Okay. I want to pull that forward. There we are. All right. Sorry for the hesitation here. As you can tell, I'm hardly a techno whiz here. Oops. And again, let's go back to the beginning. All right. Anyway. Come on. Here we are. All right. I apologize. Oh, doggone it. It did it again. How do I do that? There we are. Okay. You might recognize that gentleman as Africanus Kofi Akosa Adusai, and I blame him for my presence here today because virtually all of my African friends are directly or indirectly because of his efforts. And we share a common interest in individual rights and free markets. And I spoke at several of his liberty and entrepreneurship camps on with that experts. Okay, now I'm going to analyze a little closely here some expertise. Experts sometimes are too nearsighted. They can't tell the forest from the trees because they're too close to the situation. They have bias, they make mistakes. And, one of the advantages of age is that, I can look back at what the experts were telling us years ago and notice the inconsistencies. I want to bring this up as a further embellishment of my argument here. This is Marcia Angel, and it is simply no longer, she says, possible to believe much of the clinical research that is published or to rely on the judgment of trusted physicians or authoritative medical guidelines. I take no pleasure in this conclusion, which I reached slowly and reluctantly over my 2 decades as editor of the New England Journal of Medicine. And maybe some of you recognize that the New England Journal is one of the most prestigious medical journals in the world. Sustainability and development. I pulled this from Google, and I think it's one of the best definitions I've found. In the broadest sense, sustainability refers to the ability to maintain or support a process continuously over time. Anyway, let's address the elephant in the room here. Climate change. We have to do something, and we have to do it now before it's too late. Yes, there I was, Earth Day, April 22nd, 1970, and I listened to this gentleman and I lapped up every word that he said. Reed Bryson is an eminent climatologist, and he was warning us that at the present rate of growth back in 1970 of airline traffic, that the contrails would merge into one worldwide cloud, and we would be lucky to see the sun in the year 2000. Well,
Hello,
funny
Prof.
thing happened, deregulation. Yes?
Please, we can't
Yes?
see your screen. Please share your screen.
I'm sorry?
Please, we can't see your PPT.
Can't see my picture?
Your PPT. Please, are you projecting a PPT?
Oh, didn't. Oh, can't see my presentation?
No.
Oh, okay. I'm not understanding. Okay, let me refer to my phone here because I think Bright is. We have a problem.
Yeah, we can't see your presentation.
All right, maybe I didn't hook it
Maybe
up
if
right.
you can reshare
Oh,
it.
okay. All right. Let's back up here. Okay. Can you see me?
Yes, we can see you.
All right, let me hit escape. And let me hit this. Okay, desktop. Boom. Oh, maybe I skipped a step. Are we there now? Entire screen. Screens, documents. Okay. I apologize for this mess here. I'm not totally familiar, as you can tell. Desktop 1. Oh, share. How's that?
Yes,
Does that
much
work?
better.
I
Yeah.
can't hear you. Okay.
Yes, please, Professor Mpina.
Okay, back into the slideshow. All righty, I can speed it up. I'm pretty good at eliminating things on the fly. So here we are, Miss Angel. And anyway, this is Reed Bryson, and he was telling us back in 1970 that contrails would merge anyway into one big cloud. And I did see the sun in 1970, but along the way, deregulation happened. Airline traffic exploded. So there's many more jets flying today than there was in 1970, and still we saw the sun. Back then, they were telling us, hey, the icebergs are coming, the glaciers are coming. And I have a little video here, which I'll include in my bibliography that you can look at later. I have a few questions on climate change. Number 1, is it real? Number 2, is it catastrophic? And number 3, is carbon the culprit? Back then, when I was in college, this was the graph of historic temperature record put together by International Panel on Climate Change. And notice that this is a baseline temperature, the long-term average. And although accurate temperatures have only been available for the last 125 or 30 years or so, indicating, the modern era here, we're pretty sure that these things have happened because of historical recordings. It was pretty cold in the near most post-medieval period. And in fact, here in North America, there was a year without a summer, they called it. And that happened during this little ice age period. And about the year 1000, Eric the Red discovered Greenland, and established a colony there that persisted for several hundred years. And about the time that the graph went, the temperature started to decline, the settlement disappeared. Well, this is what Mr. Michael Mann came up with, and I noticed right away there's no medieval warming and there is no little ice age. And oh, by the way, the polar bears survived the medieval warming, and I think they will adapt if they have to. Now, I read Michael Mann's comments in person. I didn't take anybody else's word. I went there, and in 15 minutes, I decided that he was not giving us, he was manipulating the data, basically. And for a much more scientific dissertation on that, I refer you to Steve McIntyre's write-up on this. He points out that a man used 4 different proxies to go back, and there's evidence that he selected them for what he wanted to find. Okay, back to, is it real? Australia not once, but rewrote its record of climate data. And after the second time, they came up with another 23% more warming than they did with the first rewrite. And in Canada, allegedly because there were so few weather stations, they threw out the data altogether and replaced them with computer-generated data. But I submit, is this science or is it fraud? When you taint the original data, you've left the realm of science. I am sorry. There's no other explanation for it. If the data is bad, the best thing to do is to throw it away, not to play with bad data. And here's a partial list of people that have lost or concealed the data. East Anglia, they're embarrassed by the fact that they don't have the original data. New Zealand also lost its data. NASA has manipulated it, and I have references to these things in my bibliography here. And search engines are steering us toward what they want us to see. That, in effect, is another manipulation. Some of the dissenters, some of the so-called deniers have their data blocked or very hard to discover. An example here, 2023, warmest year on record, a whopping 1/8 of a degree warmer. Is that significant? And is that before or after the data adjustment? And once people have lied to us, how are we to believe them? They have destroyed the credibility of science. Other factors in global warming could be the Earth's wobble. We don't have a perfect circle around the sun, sunspots. And how did man contribute to the end of the ice age some 10,000 years ago? Where I sit would be under about 1,500 to 2,000 meters of ice if it hadn't been for global warming. And anyway, you can read the questions there. Considerations, is warming all bad? Well, I just told you. Without the end of the ice age here, I'd be under a lot of ice here. And is carbon the culprit? Well, carbon is the basic building block of life. And without it, no life is possible. Carbon dioxide plus heat could yield a faster plant growth. Well, it does. And we might be raising crops further into Saskatchewan up in Canada if the climate does continue to change. A little experiment we have for you here. Open 2 bottles of carbonated beverage, put one on in the fridge, the other on the counter at room temperature. Next day, which one has the most carbonation and why? Well, obviously, the one that is left at room temperature will become decarbonated. And I suggest that this is evidence that perhaps carbon dioxide levels are a trailing, not a leading indicator. First, the earth warms, then the water gives up its carbon dioxide. There's evidence that there was much more CO2 in the past. The coal deposits laid down in the Carboniferous period are indicative of tremendous plant growth. And here in the United States, we have a 350-year supply. And limestone, what is limestone? It's lime plus CO2, and it solidifies in our oceans and becomes rock. And here's a link to an article. I like this. Scientists seeking funding and journalists seeking an audience agree, panic sells. And there's a list of the last 120 years of climate scares, alternately warmer and cooler. I dare say if I live long enough, I'll probably see another cooling period. So my conclusions, yes, climate change is real. Yes, there is some warming. No, it's not catastrophic. Hey, the polar bears lived through the warm periods, and it's not as great as the warmists would suggest because they've manipulated the data in order to scare us more effectively. And again, fraud undermines the credibility of science, and that's a terrible, terrible place to be. So my conclusion, carbon really ain't pollution, and I have a t-shirt to commemorate that. Now, along with the climate change, we've got bad solutions, electric vehicles. If all the vehicles in the United States were electric, there would not be enough power to only charge them. They don't work well in cold weather, and the long charging periods are a real problem. Ethanol from maize, it takes a gallon of petroleum to make a gallon of ethanol. There's no, and plus chemicals needed. It's one of the most chemical intensive crops there is. And it leads to higher soil erosion. Solar and wind, well, to an extent, hey, okay. But the problems with solar and wind is that they have high initial costs, long-term life cycle costs, which are somewhat unknown because they haven't been around that long. The biggest problem is that they are intermittent. And because they are intermittent, it's just not practical. And again, these batteries are consuming resources as well. Extremely high maintenance as compared to traditional power sources, and they're vulnerable to weather, tornadoes, hailstorms. And to justify these, they're using an inaccurate accounting system. They're saying after the subsidy, well, the subsidy is not accurate accounting. If you subsidize it, you're tending to increase consumption of that which is subsidized and skewing both the electrical consumption or electrical production, and you're skewing the accounting to where it's not able to determine whether this is a good idea or not. Here in the North Country, we have snow connectors. As you can see, these guys are covered with snow. And down south, recently, they had a hailstorm, and that's what happens in a heavy hailstorm. 4,000 acres in Texas were destroyed. And here's just a portion of them. That's like $3.6 million, 3.6 million collectors that were destroyed down there. So should we take farmland out of production to put it into solar and wind? Maybe not, solar especially. Wouldn't rooftops be a better place to put them? Should we subsidize foreign businesses who provide the hardware for us? I don't, or should we subsidize at all? My vote is we shouldn't subsidize at all, because if this is a good idea, why does it need a subsidy? Okay, and green is good under these circumstances, green energy, that is. If your supply can be interrupted, if you're low consumption or a remote location, it may make sense. In fact, I have a solar collector on my hunting shack, which supplies me electricity for the 40 hours a year that I have my lights on out there. The good news is, the cost of solar is falling. And the other good news may be that there's some exciting new battery technologies coming up, which will make solar and wind a lot more feasible. Now, my take on all of this is that there are elitists that are resorting to censorship. Excuse me, I got to wet my whistle. They're attacking by way of the courts rather than through scientific inquiry. And freedom of speech in the scientific realm is essential to progress. And, you know, the consensus is all wrong. Was Copernicus wrong because he thought that the sun rather than the earth was the center of the universe? And there's all kinds of unintended consequences. Perhaps if we keep on at the pace of introducing solar collectors, we'll run out of farmland. You know, the other thing is fossil fuels saved the environment. Kerosene replaced whale oils, and today we have whales. And firewood 150 years ago was the key source of heat in the United States, and the eastern third was denuded, and a lot of that is back. A lot of the woodlands are back. Petroleum greatly increased the output, greatly increased our wealth, and contributed to greatly increasing our lifespan. Now, every year there's a bunch of billionaires that fly into Davos consuming more carbon than most of us will in a year or possibly even a lifetime. Should they be allowed to tell how the rest of us are to live? They want to limit development. And let me tell you, I believe that the African dream is just as valid as the American or European dream for a better life. Now, back to sustainable. How am I doing on time, by the way? Just shout it out. Are you there? Okay. I'm hoping that we are still connected here. In the broadest sense, sustainability refers to the ability to maintain a process continuously. Okay, go ahead. Go ahead. Okay, all right, I'm going to continue. In the business realm, sustainability equals profitability. And is there any such thing as sustainable? Well, maybe in woodlands and croplands, yes, there is sustainability, but anything created by man can and will fail. And I have a value judgment here. I'm not interested in sustaining tyrannical regimes, many of which have lasted centuries, a few of which have lasted centuries. But in these kind of regimes, the ruling elites are rich and the people are poor. I think that pretty much describes most of Africa. I wish to sustain a system of free enterprise and individual rights so that people may share in that wealth. Socialism, interventionism equals government decides, and a free market, people through their choices decide. Is sustainability, non-sustainability all bad? You know, every mine ultimately runs out of minerals, but is it better that we don't use these minerals? Is it bad that carriage makers and buggy whip makers are no longer with us, being replaced by the automotive industry? Now, a concept in economics is creative destruction. And this idea is that those firms that are better managed, that embrace new technologies, will replace the older historical terms. Excuse me. Not all destruction is good. We want to make sure that the government is not a factor in the demise of these countries. In the United States, our Fortune 500 biggest companies, only 52 of the ones that existed in 55 are still with us. Companies like Walmart, Amazon, Tesla are not on it, and many others have fallen by the wayside. What ultimately is most important? Not that individual resources or individual companies continue to exist, but that the system of free enterprise is sustained. Here we are in Africa. Trade, not aid, says James Shikwati from Kenya. And his take on that is aid helps entrench the corruptocrats of Africa. Huge bureaucracies are financed, corruption, complacency promoted, and Africans are taught to be beggars and not independent. I want for Africans what I want for my own country. I want the people to be strong, independent, and hopefully prosperous and free. Here in the United States, my tax subsidizes huge farms creating surpluses. The government supports the prices, sells these crops at a discount, or even gives them away to feed Africa. This undercuts the profitability of African farmers and creates an increasing cycle of dependency. Trade helped many nations prosper, notably Great Britain, Japan, Rome, others. And yeah, some people might say that slavery sustained Great Britain, but over 200 years ago, Adam Smith wrote that the costs of empire exceeded the benefits, and that the benefits could have been greater with a system of free trade. Another great African, George Shikwati, George unfortunately passed a couple of years ago. But some of the concepts he talked about, some of the ideas he talked about, $45 billion a year on average going to Africa every year for the last 50 or 60 years. It's wasted. It entrenches the corruptocrats, as we call them. And I like his Babangida boogie idea. And Babangida was a former president of Nigeria. And, it's a shake to the left, a shake to the right, and a little boot, another 10% goes into his Swiss bank account. And a lot of NGOs, they're okay with this because they're at least as interested in self-preservation as they are in actually solving problems. Another idea of George's, African solutions to African problems. I can suggest, but unless the African people embrace some of the ideas that we're talking about here today, the problems of Africa will persist. Here's an example of government intervention. Prairie Volta took over this, and you can see 500 workers were sent home without pay because it was not economically sustainable. What were the problems with Prairie Volta? Partnership with government. And when you engage in a public-private partnership, politics is inevitably involved, and political considerations often trump the economic. Too much interest, too much debt, and possibly too big a scale. This isn't the only rice farm. There's a whole bunch of them that I have referenced in my bibliography. United States, look at this, $2 million worth of equipment. Looks great, right? Couple problems. How many acres are needed just to support the cost of the equipment? A former pastor of ours told us that a rancher in Nebraska told him people think he's rich, but he's actually a slave, and big farmers go broke. Here's how things are done today in Africa. Those sacks can weigh up to 140 kilograms. 5 men doing literally back-breaking work. There must be something in between. Another idea from George. Meso capital, middling. His example, $30,000 to buy a fishing vessel, and you can make that much in a year. An example from my own personal experience here. I've contributed investment to Liberty Agri Services in Tamale, and recently we bought a rice mill. We can employ 3 people, and very conservatively, we can kick off $40,000 gross profit after. Okay. Am I being told to? Okay. Problems, government. Get rid of the cronyism, get rid of the socialism, trim the government to the bone. We have 100 ministries plus the cocoa board, taxes effectively the poorest people in the country because it takes 40% of the market. Anyway, Dumsor, electric-owned company. Railroads. If we had a north-south railroad, we could take a lot of these heavy traffic off the road. We got restrictions on capital. And anyway, I think I've run out of time, so I'm going to call it right there. But I think Africa, the people work hard from my visit there. Lots of available labor, a wealth of resources. You need more capital. And the ironic thing is there's more restrictions on small investors like me than there is on mega investors. Production is the cure for poverty. And the Bastiat examples, rights of Englishmen. And he pointed out too that the people are happiest and the wealthiest where they are the freest. And with that, I'm going to terminate my discussion. I apologize for the overrun. And we had a little technical difficulty there, but hopefully you got something from my presentation. And again, I'll have a bibliography that I'll give to Bright and he can share with the rest of you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Kenneth Van Doren, thank you so much for your presentation. I think with the sun energy in Africa, adopting a solar energy system will profit us. And as she said, we have a lot of labor in Africa, just that small businesses are suffering. We have noted this point. Also, once again, thank you to our esteemed speakers for sharing your expertise and insights with us today. We look forward to continued discussions and collaborations with you to address the important issues in Africa. Please join me in extending a warm welcome to our chairman, Professor Benjamin Kugler-Brown. We are deeply grateful for your presence.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, Professor, for giving this enlightened information. I think one thing that two or three things that I took from your side is data, because you have mentioned that people in helms of affairs could hide data from us and also manipulate the data. And so usually what Africa does is that we do our research, and then everything that comes out is from data that we get from these elites. So yes, if this data is manipulated and we want to use this data to model our development, then there will be something very, very wrong. So I really appreciate what you just said about data. This is very important. And this also links to what we have talked about since yesterday, that normally the models that we will use to develop Africa should somehow come from Africa. And the data that being shared should be very free and then devoid of any manipulation, as you said. And so it still boils down to Africa being independent of data. So yes, I believe that everybody understands what you just said, and we appreciate it. Thank you very much, Professor. We appreciate your talk.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Once again, I would like to encourage everyone here to scan the QR code to register your participation and for your certificate. Okay, the next on the program is presentation of citation by Miss Linda Nunu.
Hello. Hi. Good evening. Can I be heard?
Yes, please, you can be heard.
Okay, so I would wish that the media team would yeah, okay. So the citation of honor presented to Kenneth Van Doren, the National Union of Ghana Students, China, sincerely thank you for availing yourself as a guest speaker at the 5th Afba International Conference on the 2nd of May 2024. Your enlightening discourse on sustainable development illuminated the path towards a more resilient and equitable future. Your expertise in the field has not only enriched our understanding, but also catalyzed a collective commitment to action among all attendees. You have underscored the importance of innovative and localized strategies, and your insights have undoubtedly laid the foundation for ongoing dialogue and collaboration. Thank you for your significant contribution to the conference and for inspiring us to work towards a sustainable legacy for Africa. Thank you.
Welcome.
And okay, the second citation too. And citation of honor presented to Professor Mrs. Goski Alabi, the National Union of Ghana Students, China. Thank you for availing yourself as a guest speaker at the 5th Afba International Conference on the 2nd of May 2024. The way to the future that is more robust and egalitarian was made clear by your insightful talk on sustainable development. All of the attendees have committed to action as a result of your expertise in the sector, which has also deepened our comprehension on the urgency of a self-sufficient Africa. It is clear that your ideas have set a groundwork for continued interaction and collaboration. We appreciate all that you have done to make the conference successful and for motivating us to work towards leaving an indelible mark for Africa. Thank you. Thank you for listening.
Thank you so much, Ms. Linda. Now before we move to the second part of the conference, that's presentation of papers, we have a musical interlude.
Cipiri pakile ratabato, Diri cipiri pakile ratasavana, Diri cipiri pakile ratabato, Diri cipiri pakile ratasavana, Diri cipiri pakile ratabato, Diri cipiri pakile ratasavana, Diri cipiri pakile ratabato. Piri cipiri pakile rata savana. Your smile and your heart, your love and your cares. Oh, Africa, how beautiful you are, how beautiful you are. Oh, Africa. Cipiri pakile ratabato, Diri cipiri pakile ratasavana, Diri cipiri pakile ratabato, Diri cipiri pakile ratasavana.
Welcome back. That was interesting. We enjoyed it. Please, our chairman for the program would like to talk to us, Professor Benjamin Kluger-Brown.
Thank you very much. Just a quick note to set the tone. So yesterday, the presenters laid the platform for us to follow. They really did well by presenting whatever they had. And the panelists also provided certain salient points. So I would like to remind the presenters that whatever you are presenting, we have 4 things here. We will look at how you presented it, some criticisms, and some advice. So when you are being asked questions, just see it as something that is going to help you to improve upon your research. And quickly, I would like to also remind the panelists that you can be as strict as you want to be, provided it is within the confines of whatever the person has presented. So feel free to criticize as much as you want. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Chairman. So just like yesterday, we are truly fortunate to have 3 panelists leading us. They will give presenters few tips on how to better their papers. Their vision, wisdom, and guidance will undoubtedly enrich our proceedings and inspire us. Our first panelist is Dr. Mavis Edu-Jemfi. Please, can it be projected? Our first panelist is Dr. Mavis Edu-Jemfi, a lecturer at the Department of Management Studies Education in the Faculty of Business Education at Akanteng Appiah Manka University of Skills Training and Entrepreneurial Development. Then our second panelist is Professor Michael Ashmon Appiah, is an esteemed associate professor at the Dubai Business School, University of Dubai, United Arab Emirates, with a robust postdoctoral background from the School of Finance and Economics at Jiangsu University. Then our third panelist, is Dr. Isaac Safo. He's at Hainan. He's at Hainan School, Hainan University, a researcher at Hainan University. Okay, thank you. Now the presenters. Please, just as our chairman said, please work with the time, and we are supposed to follow the time strictly. Please, when your mic is muted, meaning your time is up. The first presenter. Can he be presented? Can he be projected, please? Organizer. Okay. The first presenter is Mr. Raymond Atibasa Atanga. Okay, thank you. Mr. Raymond Atibasa Atanga will be presenting on the topic Urban Fragments or Fractal of Resilience, a systematic review of an empirical case of gated communities in Accra, Ghana. Thank you. Your time starts now, Mr. Atanga.
Can I have the opportunity to share my slides?
Yes, please. Your time starts now.
Okay, so thank you for giving me the opportunity. I am doing this presentation with the support of Belinda Bonnie and our mentors, Zhu Mangmang and Mohamed Asa. Our title is Urban Fragments or Fractals of Resilience, a systematic review of empirical cases of gated communities in Accra, Ghana. This is the outline of my presentation, from introduction way down to recommendation gaps for future research. globally, urban resilience have become the priority of urban planning and management. And the issues of resilience and sustainability have also dominated the urban development discourse for quite some time now. And this happens in the midst of growing concerns about the crisis of resilience, sustainability, security, and adaptation, for which cities are largely to be blamed. Cities so far has been described as double-edged sword in terms of resilience and sustainability. On one hand, they have been described as sprawling and distended regions of unsustainability and therefore constitutes a challenge to a resilient and a sustainable future. And on the other hand, too, there have been, because historically cities have served as centers of innovation and change, some say that they hold the future for global sustainability. But the challenge is, how can contemporary cities transit from a trajectory, their current trajectory of unsustainability, to a more sustainable one? Several suggestions have been proffered. Downton says that cities need to be redesigned and retrofitted in harmony with nature. And others also think that there is a need to conduct an analysis of the subsystems of the urban systems to identify drawbacks for mitigation, and also to identify maybe success stories for replication. To the likes of Dublinsky, there is a need to strengthen the relationship between the individual components of the urban system and the urban system itself and outsiders. From urban system analysis, resilient neighborhoods are viewed as building blocks of a resilient and a sustainable city. In this light, gated communities are perceived as subsystems of the urban system that have far-reaching implications on the resilience and sustainability of the entire system. The general view of gated communities is that it denotes private residential development, fortified enclaves, citadels, areas with restricted access, and areas that privatizes public space with security and leisure as its topmost priority. Worldwide, gated communities are an indispensable housing type. In the United States, in Europe, in Latin America, Sub-Saharan Africa, they're everywhere. And their development has raised so many concerns. There are many factors that led to the rise of gated communities with time. One is the desire for access to quality infrastructure, safety, and security for fear of crime within the urban system. And then the desire for social amenities, which are lacking in many southern cities. And then also affluence, the desire to, create a condition where the rich associate with themselves and try to show off. The gated community debate has been polarized along two threads. One tried to highlight the good part of gated communities in terms of providing good shelter and housing for the rich in particular, and also building social capital at that level. The other side of the argument also seeks to highlight the negative impacts of gating on the urban fabric. This debate is unsettled, and there are a lot of gaps that are emerging. One is that a system analysis of gated communities is lacking from the literature, where we can get to understand from the aggregate level in the city, are gated communities that good or bad. The other thing is we need to also pitch gated communities against contemporary urban goals such as resilience and sustainability. So this leaves us with a lingering question: do gated communities serve as drawbacks to urban resilience, or they facilitate urban resilience? This is what precipitated the study. In terms of theory, we try to look at resilience from the evolutionary theory of resilience, that's the ETR, which argues that when confronted with environmental and social change, a complex socio-ecological system will change, transform, adapt, rather than returning to equilibrium or normality. So the ETR basically is against the equilibristic theory of resilience that is associated with a bouncing back kind of fashion. So in the context of ETR, resilience is considered as a dynamic process and not a fixed state. So from this concept, we developed the 3D class resilience framework based on the works of De Valdi, Cellere, and Cook, and several other authors. So from this, the 3D plus perspective, the three dimensions, the most common way of conceptualizing resilience is the three, from the evolutionary theory of resilience, is the three dimensions. That's persistence, adaptability, and transformability across multiple scales. But De Valdi tried to increase, to add preparedness to the model to incorporate the ingenuities of humans in terms of planning to mitigate disasters. So this makes it the 3D plus. So from this model, we identified and teased out 72 indicators for measuring resilience. You can see Tanga et al. 2024, an article that was just published last month. Accra is the context for our study. Why? One, there are so many gated communities concentrated within the Greater Accra metropolitan area. And two, Accra also seeks to build resilience. Of course, they have joined the Rockefeller 100 Resilient Cities Network. And of course, there are also many studies on gated communities in Accra. So this provides the basis for our review. Okay, so these are just pictures of some gated and a table of showing some gated communities in Ghana. We use, in terms of methods, we use the systematic configurative review, and we use the PRISMA guideline, which involves 4 steps. So the first step is eligibility criteria, what should be included in the review and what shouldn't. And then the second is the search strategy, and then the output from the search. We virtually ended with 12 very relevant articles for which we use to generate the data. Coding was through thematic analysis. Okay, so the findings. Are gated communities fractals? Yes. They provide very good infrastructure. Indeed, that's what the adverts, if you go to Ghana web.com, you find a lot of adverts about gated communities. And one of the things is to advertise their, infrastructure, the infrastructure that's available, the swimming pools, the luxurious finishing and deco. So they are really very beautiful buildings that everybody would like to be there. So in terms of aesthetics, they're really very good, comparable to what we find in the city there in Accra. And they also have backup infrastructure services like electricity, water. So the doom so that's being experienced in Accra can happen in gated communities because these services are supplied 24/7. They have generators and other backup services available. Then they also have some bit of green and blue infrastructure that really helps to improve the environment. One of the main reasons why people move into gated communities is that they provide security. So a fear of crime in many southern cities is a push factor for people trying to run away from the city center to live in seclusive environments. Then in terms of planning, generally, what we know is that private planning and governance of certain services, public services, appears to be more efficient than public planning and management. So that's why we're embarking on privatization of water, privatization of so many other public services. So from this notion, we find a lot of prospects that gated communities, provide and can provide to planning and provision of essential services like housing and its associated, facilities. Then we also identify that there are a bit of friendship and social cohesion among some of the residents in gated communities. That is a positive kind of phenomena. And they have joint programs and they meet for sports, swimming pools, churches, and most Muslim prayers and all that. So the last positive thing we can discuss is employment. They also offer low-income employment or jobs to people who live around, which means that the fiscal gates are closed, but the social gates are still open for interaction. Then are there fragments? What are the negative consequences of gated communities on urban resilience? So first we talk about the public interest question. And the public interest question, when private interest is at stake, then the public interest in terms of social inclusion, in terms of equity, in terms of access, the just city concept, and the right to the city by the poor are driven to the backstage. So these are some of the challenges. Yes, then spatial fragmentation of public space is one of the other thing we can talk about. Normally in a city, in a community, you have the interaction, the streets provides the basis for social interaction, economic interaction without borders. So gates come in to now restrict, to serve as a restriction of this free movement that creates innovation and integration and cohesion and diversity. So the diversity is lost, and which is a worrying kind of phenomena. And it can lead to uncontrolled urbanization, as we saw in the findings. Social exclusion by nature, gated communities are designed to exclude. The gates are there because they want to exclude some other non-members, so-called non-members, because the members or residents of the gated communities have paid for a certain kind of or package of goods and services that they would not want non-members to enjoy. So this is really serious in terms of resilience, because resilience is about inclusiveness, it's about building inclusive and integrative societies. So we stand to miss a lot for building exclusive living environment based on social and economic status. And the last negative or fragment that we can talk about is urban sprawl. Most of the gated communities were located at the periphery of Accra. I think I missed one slide. This is the first slide I wanted to discuss. So from this map, you see that most of the gated communities are scattered all over. Yes, some from the airport residential area down to the periphery of Accra. So commuting and Accra is to a large extent very centralized. Most of the services offices are within the city center. So you can imagine somebody located in a gated community, which is about 8 kilometers away from the city center, then you have to commute to the city center every day for work and back. And this contributes to congestion. I think I missed this slide earlier. So the general notion about what a gated community is from the literature in Ghana, from what we find from our review, is that gated communities are private residential areas characterized by security control, symbolized by fences or walls with relatively better social amenities, physical layout, and beautiful designs. It's a show of affluence, and they also have some bit of social cap. This is the general view of what a gated community is in the context of Accra. And the idea of gateness invokes excludability, security, and the gates is to secure them, the residents, and security. Then privateness also denotes a system that is out of state control, because a private place, no person can go there, and the state authorities need permission to even go there. So also reinforces the concept of club rules, members and non-members, non-members. Yeah. So in conclusion, the overall findings reflect the general dichotomous and highly polarized view that portrays gated communities as both positive and negative form of urban development. And in the context of urban resilience, the findings highlight the dual role of gated communities as drawbacks and as fractals of urban resilience. The potential for gated communities to serve as fractals can be realized through sector policies, regulation, and moral suasion. So the potential is there, but we need to dig deep to realize them. So recommendations, we think that yes, gated communities are not bad. They provide essential services to a certain category of people. So first, regulate by regulation, as I indicated in my conclusion, we can get them to incorporate these principles of resilience into their design, construction, operation, and management. And we can also get government to provide similar kind of a housing type that so ongoing Ghana, we have a lot of affordable housing, of course, which has never been affordable anyway. In Accra, Asagleme, and then Apesi, there are many. So government can also incorporate or retrofit some of those who are already existing to provide some of these top-notch facilities that can attract the urban elites. So gaps for future research. Are gated communities really resilient? We couldn't answer this. What specific impacts does gating have on the urban fabric? We could then also find answers to this. And what will be the future role of gated communities in fostering resilient and sustainable cities in the global south? So next, we'll go to the field. It's an ongoing research. I will go to the field to find answers to this. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you, Mr. Ramon Atibasa Atanga. Kindly turn on your camera. Kindly turn on your camera. Thank you. Okay, so before the panelists come in, we will have 2 questions for him. Just 2 questions from 2 people. Okay, Mr. Alimo's hand is up.
Thank you very much. Mr. Tanga, congratulations. I have seen that your work is published in World Development Sustainability. However, you did not mention it in your presentation. You know, the criticisms that may come for a published work may be different from an unpublished work. So maybe next time when you are presenting, you let people know that it is published. My question is that in your review, did you consider the cost factor? For instance, these days we see the cost of some housing facilities, and we wonder how are they getting the prices? They just build and put a price on it, and the same may apply to the gated houses. Who is regulating the prices or the rents that they are charging? You know, this aspect, did you consider that in your review? If not, I think that going forward, you should consider that as well, as you are going back to the field, because that is a key factor, especially since you said that the gated communities are attracting the rich in the society. So how about us? How about the middle income and the lower income? It means that something needs to be done so that we get fair prices. Thank you.
Hello?
Thank you for your question, Mr. Alimo. Mr. Raymond, do you have anything to say in
Yeah, I have
response
to
to the
thank,
question?
yes, I thank my brother Alimo for the question, and I would like to, and his compliment. I would like to say that our review was, we adopted the open thematic review kind of technique. So we read through the findings, and what we find is what we report. So unfortunately, the cost issue, this is a review work, so the cost issue didn't really come up. So, but I agree with you that we need to include it in our next step, which is the empirical work. So thank you for the suggestion. Well noted.
Okay, thank you. Honorable Bernard, do you have a question as well?
His response has provided the answer. So I will just pause here.
Okay, thank you. So you move to the panelists. The first panelist, I'm not a feminist, but I'll go by ladies first. Dr. Mavis Edujemfi, sorry. Dr. Mavis Edujemfi.
Can you hear me?
Yes, please, we can hear you.
Earlier said that was a nice presentation, and the topic too is very interesting. Because I remember when I was in China, I said to myself, wow, I wish I could get these gated communities in Ghana, since it's not common. And those that are common to it in the house of the private, and very, very expensive. As the Mr. Dr. Alimo said, it's very expensive. So we need to consider the low income people. So your research highlights on the importance of considering the interconnectedness of the urban environment in building resiliency. That is very important, and I love that. And then the empirical cases presented and demonstrated, and the diverse experience of gated communities in Accra. So it will be interesting to explore how these findings, your findings, can be also applied to other urban communities. I wish that your research will not be limited to Accra alone. You need to build on the research and also extend it towards the other regions in Ghana. And also the identification of the environmental gaps is gated in the gated communities, and the urban resilience discourse is also essential for future research. As earlier said, you can continue to build on this research to address the complex challenges. You can also factor this, address the complex challenges of urbanization and resilience. Definitely, first, the expensiveness of these gated communities is one of the challenges in Ghana, because if you are low income, there's no way we can get data in these gated communities. So if the government should also come in and build more of these gated communities, I think it will help those low income. So my question here is that, how can the urban planners and policymakers balance the need for gated communities with the goal of creating inclusive and connected cities? How can urban planners and policymakers balance the need for gated communities with the goal of creating inclusive and connected cities? They need to consider those with low income. They need to, since you said it involves inclusiveness, so they need to also include them. And then the last question I have here is, how can stakeholders work together to address the challenges and opportunities presented by gated communities? Definitely, there are more challenges. So how can stakeholders also work together to address these challenges? Overall, your presentation is very good, and then the topic is very innovative. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Mavis. Honorable Raymond.
Yes, thank you so much. I thank Dr. Mavis for the compliments and also the suggestions that she has given to us to improve the work as we try to hit the field. In terms of the first question, I think that I suggested that in our recommendation that through regulation, we can get gated communities to be inclusive. We need to, get even at the construction, the design and construction stage, what constitutes a resilient city. That's the objectives of the city, the goals of the city should be incorporated in every aspects of the development in the city, including the communities. And fortunately, they have the money because there are private developers who are looking at profit. They have the money to create the best, kind of resilient or eco or sustainable forms of urbanization that we long desire in Accra. So through regulation, we can get them to build the cities in such a way that there will be diverse types of housing units for the rich and also for the poor. So at the moment, there's a regulatory gap that needs to be filled. When that is done, we can get them to serve our purpose and to help us achieve our objectives. The second one is more related to the first. We need to, build consensus. We have the Ghana Green Builders Association. We have Grader. We have a lot of stakeholders in the housing industry. So I think that if they can all, synergetically bring their ideas together, we can move the housing sector forward. And I agree with you that the ongoing government sponsored housing units should try to, incorporate some of these principles of resilience, including inclusiveness that we all desire or we want to see in the gated communities. Yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Tanga. We move to the next panelist, Dr. Isaac Safo.
Okay. Thank you, Dr. Millicent. Okay, Honorable Raymond, I hope I can be heard clearly.
Yeah.
Okay. I must say your topic is very interesting. But what we are doing currently is, let me say, aligns with my area of interest. So I have some critical concerns regarding your work, which I believe you should just note them down. Okay, so can you go to page 5 of your slide, your presentation? Page 5, yeah.
Okay.
Yes. Yeah, page 5. As part of your study rationale, you made mention of one point. You stated that the discourse failed on page 5. Yeah.
Yes.
How do you substantiate this as part of your study rationale? You stated that the discourse failed pertaining to the understudy scope. You stated it failed. How do you substantiate this?
Thank you very much for your compliment and also for your question. I said that the discourse failed to address contemporary urban goals, e.g. resilience and sustainability. So much of the discourse is about their contribution to urban development in general and not specifically resilience. So that's why I made the statement is backed by the literature.
If you state that discourse means we have different lines of interpretation. So it might not be from one particular school of thought. So why would you state specifically that this course failed. I think you should be cautious of the words you choose. Okay, again on page 6, you stated that you employed or utilized evolution theory of resilience. Basically, the ETR theory, even though it's good, you used or you cited that. I think you can update or possibly link it to the grand urban model. The grand urban model basically adapts sponge cities, low carbon resilient cities, and then garden cities. In the context of your study, you can just liaise the ETR theory to the grand urban model, stating or linking it to SDG 11, which talks about urban resilience, is quite too broad. So if you link it or you limit it to particularly garden cities, which has some of these characteristics linked to gated communities, it would really help enrich or improve your work. In your work, you stated you did systematic literature review. There's nothing systematic about what you presented. The reason why I'm saying so is you failed to tell us what screening, did you conduct any screening? What were the exclusion and then the inclusion criteria? I'm listening.
Yeah, I have all that, except that I just wanted to save time. I have all that on slide 9.
Okay. Can you
The
share slide 9?
eligibility criteria, what was included, the basis for inclusion and exclusion. I use a 4-step approach from Prisma.
Okay, can you share that for us to see?
Yes, I can say that right now.
Yeah, because for systematic review, normally we need a flow diagram or a flow chart, which will tell us how you obtain your data or you acquired your data, where or the source you acquired the data from, and then the exclusion and inclusion criteria, what you did to actually sort out or screen the data that you collected, but you didn't actually tell us anything pertaining to these aspects.
So from this slide, method 1, eligibility criteria, study design, only studies identified as empirical or field studies were considered, topic and type of participants. The paper reviewed only topics that were relevant to gated communities in Ghana, and the study participants were gated community residents, managers, real estate developers, regulatory authorities, and service providers. Language, only research works reported in English language were considered. Publication status, only peer-reviewed journal articles, published books or book chapters were considered. Year of publication. So this guideline is not from me, it's from Prisma. Prisma says if you want to do a systematic review, first eligibility criteria to consider this. So it's a scientific process.
Yeah.
Then next, 2 of 2, we have the other criteria. It's also from Prisma. Yeah, so it's a mechanistic kind of a mechanical process.
I know Prisma very well. Okay, so go to figure 2. Go to figure 2.
Figure 2?
Yeah, where you have the sample points for Greater Accra regarding the gated communities. Yeah.
Yes.
It is. I will just comment on this. For figure 2, I would advise that you add grid coordinates to that to the map that you designed for the study area. Again, you need to link Accra with the sample points with an arrow to the map of Ghana, so that at least it will tell readers that it was the subject the area of interest has been cropped out from the map of Ghana. And then again, why are some of the points, if I heard you clearly, you said Accra, right? Your study domain is in Accra. Why are some of the points falling out of Accra?
Yes, if you come here, Accra is from our definition of Accra. And our definition of Accra is also based on other researchers' definition of Accra, particularly EFI, as I showed in that other map. See, Accra has many definitions. One is the AMA, that's the Accra Metropolitan Assembly, so which has I think about 5 or so districts. I'm not too sure, but I'll check that. And we have the Greater Accra, which spans beyond the AMA. So what we did is to consider the Greater Accra and not just the nucleus of Accra, not AMA. So we're using AMA as a nucleus of the city of Accra. So that's why you find, gated communities scattered across those other districts outside it. So from here, we have with the Greater Accra Metropolitan Assembly, which is just about 20 kilometers square and a population of 1.6 approximately, as its nucleus. The Greater Accra Metropolitan Area, that's the Gamma, spans the Accra, the Greater Accra region with the land area of this. So we're considering the Greater Accra Metropolitan Area as our definition of what Accra is in the context of gated community. Otherwise, you don't do justice to the subject, because most of the gated communities are located outside the AMA. So you can't use only AMA, and there's no other name you can give.
Okay, so you see,
you can suggest.
Honorable Raymond, so you see how even with you were struggling to explain to us. The same way when someone downloads your paper, you wouldn't be there to explain it to the person that, okay, possibly Accra is like this, Accra has this district, has that, and has that. You wouldn't be there. Possibly the journal or your target journal has other readership. So you must, when you are considering some of these things, you must actually simplify things in order not to make things misleading for people who read or the journal's audience. Let me put it that way. And participants, because there are some people who are also here to learn. So you wouldn't be there to explain why some points are falling outside AMA in this case, which you explained that, okay, it covers the entire Accra, but your topic limits state Accra. So how would readers know if it is Accra Metropolitan Assembly or Greater Accra to a larger extent? So please consider that moving forward. And then for the systematic aspect, you need to, yes, you stated Prisma, but you can also add a flow chart to visualize the screening and then the exclusion and inclusion criteria, the data analysis and visualization, everything we did just to make it easier. Thank you.
Well noted, with thanks. I really appreciate your suggestions, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Raymond Atanga. Thank you so much for your presentation. It's been insightful, but we are limited with time, so I'll urge the remaining 3 presenters to be brief, and the panelists, please be brief with us as well. We are limited by time. Now, the next presenter is...
I also want to just, excuse me a minute, to thank all those who have given input to improve our work and our audience. We are really very grateful. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, the next presenter is Mr. Philip Kofi Alimu. Please turn on your camera.
Thank you. Can I share my screen?
Please bear in mind the time constraints and be brief with us. Thank you.
Can I share my screen?
Yes, please. Yes, please. Your time starts now.
I cannot share my screen. Good evening to all of you. I hope you can see my screen now.
Yes.
Yes,
Thank you
we
very
can.
much. Thank you very much. Okay, so I am a doctoral candidate at Tonji University, majoring in transportation engineering, and my study area is smart and sustainable transportation systems. Today, I'll be presenting on these 4 aspects. So I start with the background. It is projected that by 2050, we should have an urbanization rate of about 60% in Africa. Even today, as we speak, Africa is the leading when it comes to urbanization. It means that our cities are having an increasing population. Now, this calls for, although this is positive economically because of the human capital, there are dangers also that we need to prepare for. Because when you have more people moving into the cities, you need to have a robust transportation system to meet the demand. Because when you wake up every day, some people have to go to work, some have to go to hospital, some have to go to the supermarket to buy something. We are all moving around. So transportation is what the economy stands on. However, we are faced with several challenges in our cities when it comes to the transportation systems. One is traffic congestion. I believe by now you can remember how you sweat on that day when you were in the bus going to work. It took you a long time to get to work. There were a lot of vehicles on the road. So traffic congestion remains a very big problem in Africa, not just in Africa, but around the world. We have traffic safety, the accidents and the death as a result of accidents. Then we also have the traffic pollution. You know, as you stay longer on the road, you inhale a lot of carbon emissions and other pollutants which affect your health. So it also remains a very big problem. And then we also have the energy efficiency because the vehicles run on energy. So all these things are interlinked. If vehicles spend a longer time on the road, they are definitely going to emit more gases, and the drivers are going to get tired and they might go speeding on the highways and get into accidents. Also, the energy consumption will go up. Now, why are we talking about all of this? It is because if we simplify it into monetary terms, it is causing huge losses. Now, in the US in 2021, in 2018, they estimated and saw that the traffic delays alone cost the country 86 billion US dollars. Now, that is also costing them 4 days lost. So in a year, you lose 4 days. You lose 4 days in traffic. This is serious. Now, recently in Hong Kong, 2 professors did a work where they tried to see, okay, so when there's an accident, the accident is causing some congestion. How much does it affect the economy? And they realized that in 2021, that alone cost the Hong Kong economy 11 million US dollars. Now, if we come back to Africa and in our country, Ghana, in 2013, some professors did a work. They tried to estimate how much we lose in traffic. And we lose 9% of productive resources. So 9% of productivity is lost in traffic. So this makes traffic problems very, very serious that we all need to give it attention. Now, does a solution come in terms of constructing more roads? Many people, when you talk about traffic, then they say, let's build more roads. That will solve the problem. But the reality is that building more roads does not solve congestion. Research has shown, as this publication, and experts always talk about it. It is not about building more roads. When you build more roads, people buy more cars and they speed more. So you are not solving any problem. But then there is another solution, which is traffic management. As you can see from this map, you have the traffic lights in the city. Traffic management is supposed to help us to control the movement of vehicles within the city, right? So you see, these are different intersections having the traffic lights. And when it comes to traffic management, we want to ensure that these traffic lights are well optimized. They are doing their work efficiently. so that we don't delay too much in traffic. They reduce the losses, the productive losses I talked about earlier. And so traffic management remains one of our key challenges as Africa when it comes to reducing our economic losses or to booming our economy. Now, in solving the congestion problem, you don't just generalize issues. You need to identify what are the micro causes. What are the things that are contributing to the congestion? All right, so we started with some basic research where we audited some 7 signalized intersections in Accra. And we came across some of these problems. As you can see here, you see this is called the roadside friction. You see the vehicles are parked at the wrong place. When you do this, you limit the road space, so you are reducing the road capacity. I think most of us are familiar with this in our intersections. This is one problem. The other one, we have the hawkers in the traffic. I believe by now some of us can remember, or perhaps some of us have ever been hawkers, right? I won't be surprised at all. So these are some of the micro problems that we identified, which is worth investigating. It is worth understanding. And we went on further to look at how all these behavior factors affect or contribute to the alarming road traffic in Africa, right? This is also the work we did some years ago, a few years ago. All right. So we are looking at all these concerns and trying to see how we can address them by focusing on one area. And we decided to focus on the hawking problem, right? The hawking problem. Now, one thing let me say, we cannot address traffic congestion in our cities if we do not look at this. Although this is not the only cause, we need to study it, we need to do more research and understand what impact it is having, and then we're trying to find solutions, right? Try to find solutions. Now, if you look at this picture, I think you are already familiar, so I wouldn't spend much time on this. But what happens is that as they are here now in the traffic, when it turns green, you know, the vehicles are supposed to leave. They are supposed to evacuate the intersection. But when they are here, a lot of conflict can take place, which safety-wise might be risky. In terms of efficiency of the intersection, it is going to affect the signal. It's going to affect how many vehicles can cross the intersection. And so now it is very important that we understand where this problem is coming from. We are all familiar with it, but where is it coming from, or when did it start? Now, we can link the hawking problem from the literature. We trace it to the 80s, the 1980s. You know, after independence, we had a lot of struggles. It got a time that the debt to GDP ratio in Africa rose to around 70%. 70%. That was terrible. Coupled with huge prices of fuel and energy in terms of the oil prices globally also shot up. And so our countries were very, very distressed. I think some of you remember the popular Yentuya of the Champon government and the others. Right, now going into the 80s, the problem worsened again. Things were getting hot. Things were getting worse. So we have to depend on the World Bank and the IMF again. And they gave us conditions. You know, they don't just give money. They always give us conditions. So one of the conditions they gave us is to restructure our economy. So we had a structural adjustment program. Now, so let us look briefly at this. You see, this is just our official development assistance that we got from the World Bank and the IMF. You can see that from the 80s, you can see that it really peaked. It really peaked. We really became very distressed. So we had to implement some of the conditions they gave us, which were to devalue our currencies and to reduce the number of people that the government was employing, and to also increase taxes. These are the same conditions they give to us today. So what, in simple terms, this brought a lot of burden, and a lot of people lost their jobs. They still have to survive. So it sprang up the informal economy, which Professor Alabi talked about. The informal economy is what is holding Africa now. It's about 80% of the working population are into the informal. This is where it's coming from. So the problem we are seeing now in traffic it's a problem coming from the economy. It is very important to establish this. We go on. Now, when we trace this, we can say through the whole of Sub-Saharan Africa, the hawking problem, it is just Accra, you can see that it is also very prevalent. So if we are talking about improving the traffic, we cannot just forgo this problem. And this is what we sought to investigate or to research on. All right, so our first research was to look at the impact. How does this hawking that we see, the people selling in traffic, if you want to add to policy, you need to give some data to tell policymakers why you are saying what you are saying. So the first one, look at the safety aspect. And as you may all know, data in Africa is very difficult to get. Professor Kruger said that it's very difficult to get data. We didn't have any data to rely on, so we had to go and collect our own data. Now, we do not have the technologies that are used to collect traffic data, so we had to use the drone. Why did we use the drone? One, we wanted to study how the hawkers are behaving, but we didn't want the hawkers to know that we are studying them. Why? If they know we are studying them, they are going to oppose us. No hawker likes to see the camera fixed on him or her. Now, you also want to collect enough data, and you cannot just go and fix a camera somewhere. It won't work because the coverage will be you can only cover a smaller area. So the drone gives ability to cover a larger area. As you can see here, this is the airport area, and this is the intersection we covered. We covered about 300 meters from the stop line, right? And we flew the drone to a height of 300 meters. Now, I think if you are a safety person, you'll be asking me, how did you fly it like that? Okay, so before we could fly the drone, we have to make sure that the weather was clear. When you are using drone data, the weather should be clear. Also, you need to get the appropriate permits. So we got the permits from the Aviation Authority, who will tell us when you can fly it and what time you can fly it, so that it doesn't cause a plane to crash. Accra has an airport. So all these things were considered before we could go out and collect data. So please, researchers, let's take note. If you miss some of these steps and there's a problem, then you might end up in jail. Going forward, also, we have to talk to the traffic police. When the traffic police is standing there, it doesn't allow the normal red, go, green to work, which is the traffic lights. He has to do things himself. So if you have a traffic police standing here, you cannot collect your data. You are going to collect the wrong things, right? So we have to talk to them to allow us. So all these things are very important. They are all struggles we went through to be able to collect the data. So after collecting the data, the next step is to extract it. It's a video. What does a video tell you? It only shows you pictures. You have to bring data out of the pictures, right? So we have to use a software which is also very expensive. We had to pay to be able to use it to extract the trajectories, the speed of the vehicles. I mean, we give each of the vehicles an ID and several other variables that we needed to do the analysis. So at this point, I want to tell you that collecting traffic data is very expensive. It's very expensive. And sometimes somebody may wonder why there's a problem but nobody is researching about it. It's because the money needed is not there. How much funding do they get, right? So one of the things Professor Kruger said, which I really like, is that the government should be able to fund people to do research. Sometimes they can even collect the data for us to use. So this is very important, the cost of collecting the data. Okay, so we went on. Let me go on straight to what we did. Because of the time, I didn't go through all the modeling and all of that. But the first thing we thought to do is look at these pockets in the traffic. Are they really safe? You can't just say they are in the traffic so they are unsafe. No. You need to speak with data. Are they safe? So we had to do that kind of analysis. And we used what we call survivor modeling, survivor time analysis. And using the data from the videos, we're able to do this kind of analysis. What are some of the things that we saw, we found? We found that red light running behaviors, about 54% of the of the hawkers remained in the lanes during the green time. During the green time, you shouldn't have anybody in the lanes because the vehicles are moving. They can hit you or they can cause some kind of collision. But we have this. So that is the first red warning, right? Also, when the speed of the vehicles increased beyond 20 kilometers per hour, it became unsafe. So you can see that a lot of people are being hit in traffic because of the hawking. But unfortunately, we do not have data for that because we still treat hawkers as pedestrians. Pedestrians are the people who use the intersection, who cross the intersection. Hawkers are the people who carry and sell. But we have not been able to distinguish them when it comes to collecting data. When the police are collecting data about accidents, they do not separate them. So we always see the data as pedestrians. But it is for going forward, we have to collect data and separate the road users so that we know who really the car is hitting and know what we can do about it, right? Also, their lane exit as to whether to leave the lane early or not was predicted by the queue. How many vehicles are there? How many vehicles are there? How long is the queue, right? Because they are there to sell and all of that. And the traffic speed also determines they're living in the lane for a long time or not. All right, so we go on. These are just some graphs to tell you. We see the probability of initiating entry to be high as okay, so this 30 seconds within after the red signal. I think red signal means the red light. So when the red lights pop red, what happens to the hawkers? So the first 30 seconds after it turns red, what happens? So we see that most of the hawkers find a safer haven at the roadside. They come from the road, some come from the roadside, some come from the road median. But the probability of initiating entry is most likely coming from the roadside. Now also, late entry 30 seconds after the red signal. Probability of initiating entry by speed. You see that as the speed increased, the hawkers, their survival rate is reducing, right? So if the vehicles are moving very fast, they are not willing to enter. But if the vehicles are slow, then they have they want to enter and sell. All right. Now let's go on. Survival estimates for it during the green time. Now it has stayed green. The vehicles have begun to move, right? If there are more vehicles there, they are tempted to what? To stay longer. If the vehicles are not many, they will leave. Now, all these things are going to help us to see how we can control them, how we can control their entry and their exit so that we can reduce their impact. All right. Now, the second part we want to see. So we have looked at whether they are safe. We want to see whether they have any impact on the intersection. I told you that when there's the delay, it affects the efficiency of the intersection. So now let's look at this. So usually we say that the first 5 vehicles, okay, from the front here to the front here is called headway, right? So the distance between the 2 vehicles, the distance between these for the first 5 vehicles. Usually after the first 5 vehicles, the distance between the other vehicles is constant. That is the usual thing, right? So we want to see when there are hawkers there, do we still have this constant same scenario, or it is changing everything? It is distorting the standard, right? Now you can see from here that when the hawkers interact with the vehicles, there are some very important things we should note here. Now, hawkers duration of vehicle, how long they stay or how long they spend on a vehicle, also have impact on the head, a direct relationship. So if they stay longer, the headway of the vehicles upstream. When you say upstream, it means that if this is a vehicle, the vehicles upstream are these ones, and the vehicles downstream are these ones. Those in front are downstream, those here are upstream. So the vehicles here, if the hawker comes here and sells something here, the vehicles here are affected. Now, when they are affected, it also affects those behind. And it is generally going to affect the number of vehicles that will pass through the intersection, right? So this is the first thing. Now you see a lot of speed distortions because of the hawkers, which makes it very unsafe. Now you also see that most of the interactions, so the vehicles are coming from here, and this is a stop line. They have to cross here. But you see that most of the hawkers are here. And this is in engineering, this is very dangerous because it is causing more losses, right? All right. Now, so this is the general scenario activity. These are the first part. But you see that our results shows that contrary to the standard, we are having about 7, right? So it means that under the conditions we see in our cities, the traffic, the car following behavior is not the same as what is in China here. It's not the same as what is in US. It's not the same as what is in elsewhere. All right, so I'll run that very.
Please run up. Your time is up. Okay. As I said earlier, you'll be muted when your time is up. I'm sorry about that. Please, you take just a question. Anyone with a question for Mr. Alimo? Okay, there's no question. Then we move to the panelists. The first
No,
panelist.
someone wants to ask. Someone is asking a
Who?
saying hello.
Please, who has a question?
I do.
Okay.
So I want Mr. Alimo to tell us what is the statement of his problem, because he has only tried to tell us the circumstances that are necessitating why he is into this way. So what exactly is the statement of his problem?
All right, thank you very much for your question. Now you have the traffic stream. Usually it should be for vehicles, and now you have hawkers there. You want to show what impact the hawkers are having on this new kind of traffic scenario that you are having. Now, why is it important that we do this? It is important that we do this so that we can improve how we control the intersections and also how we control the behaviors of the hawkers in the cities. You know, I couldn't finish the entire presentation, so some things you may not understand. But the essence of this work, which is the inspiration, is that we have huge congestion in our cities. We all are not okay with that. We need this problem to be solved, yet there is no data. How do we get new data to understand this problem, to understand the impact it is having on the society, and see how we can regulate it? So this is the motivation for this work.
So where does the construct of SMART, okay, come in? It's like you couldn't finish your slide, so maybe we would have to talk on the road side. So I'll connect with you on the road side rather, but we will not cause congestion. Sorry.
Okay, thank you. So we move to the panelists. The first panelist, Dr. Safo.
Okay, Dr. Alimo, that was a nice presentation. Because we don't have more time, I will ask 2 questions. What are some of the sustainable policies or programs or projects that, in your opinion, should be initiated to avert street hawking in Ghana and beyond? And then again, the second one is, how were did the Osteri carry out any validation pertaining to the images that you took, and then looking at your correlation and then your coefficient of determinant, the figures or the results, they are too good to be true. How did you validate them? Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Please
So,
hold on. I would like the second panelist to also speak, then you answer all at once.
All
So
right.
Dr. Mavis Edu-Jenfi.
Okay, that was a nice presentation. And then he also highlighted on the critical issue of sustainable traffic management. This has been a big issue in Ghana in terms of traffic management. And also, I like the fact that you highlighted on the complex relationship between transportation, urbanization, and the economic development. That was a good one. But if you are really emphasizing on the leveraging the intelligent transportation system, that is the ITS, that you use in your work, and also providing alternative sustainable livelihood for the hawkers, then it will help us to achieve the Afba dream. Yes. Okay, so I have a question. How can you strike the balance between regulating street, say traffic or street hawking, and supporting the livelihoods of workers? Because right now we want to regulate street hawking. In this case, a lot of people are going to lose their job. So how are you going to strike the balance between these two? Thank you.
Okay, Mr. Limu.
All right, thank you very much to the panelists for the questions. Yeah, in terms of policies, I was going to mention them at the end of it. But so this is one of the policies that we explore, which is alternative livelihood sources. We find that most of the hawkers are really willing to get out of the traffic if we can find them alternative, more sustainable jobs to do. And some of the jobs they mentioned are listed here, but their concern is that if they agree and leave, are we going to stand by our words? Are policymakers going to stand by their words? And so one of the policies that we need to come out with a policy document, which is a consultative approach with the hawkers. Now, this is how we are going to treat you if you are willing to leave the roadway. If you are going to go where they put it on paper so that every government that comes will follow that policy. Because if we just say we are moving them, it will not work. That is what we have been doing, and it's not working. Right. So we need to come up with a policy document. The second one is the engineering. There are two sides of the coin. There is the economic part and there's the engineering part. So the engineering part, how we're going to improve, optimize our traffic systems so that we discourage the hawkers from entering the road. And over here, I'm going to talk about the smart part where my brother was talking about. Like, I couldn't get there. So going on, we are researching on system coordination, where we are going to coordinate signals, intersections together so that we reduce the rate. You have more grains, right, as you are going through. So that if you have more grains, the hawkers cannot enter. And that comes on to the question that Dr. Mavis asked, that when we do that, what is going to happen to the hawkers? And so the thing is that we cannot just rely on one policy. We need to intermarry the two policies, the social aspect and engineering. As we are doing this to stop them from entering the road, we are also providing the alternative employment for them, the alternative plan. So all these will be put together into the policy document so that we'll be able to satisfy the two sides of the coin. We cannot say we are leaving hawkers to be doing what they are doing, and we are not doing anything about it. By 2050, when the cities expand, we are going to have a serious deadlock. Now, we are not also going to say that we are going to move them without doing anything about the traffic system. We need to improve our optimization of our systems. So all these things are very important, this conclusive process. Okay, regarding the validation, well, as I said, there isn't any previous data. So there's no previous data to use to validate this, right? We are using the data that was collected in situ, at the intersections. And that is the primary data. And so There is no secondary data to use to validate it. Perhaps in the future, we can do another one and also use it to validate this, right? So, or when we do another one in the future, we can use this to also validate that one, okay? So that means that we need to do more research. That's the only way we can do the validation. Thank you.
Okay, you are welcome. Since I partly contributed to this study, I will give it a pass. The questions were rightfully answered.
Thank you, Mr. Kofi Alimo. We move to the next presenter, Mr. Ebenezer Asiama.
Yeah.
Mr. Ebenezer Asiama. Okay, yes, we can see your screen.
You can see your screen, right?
Yes, we can.
Okay, so
Your time starts now.
okay, thanks so much. Good evening once again, thanks everybody to the panelists, good evening to fellow colleagues, students, professional researchers, other scientists, and people that we are here to hear from for the first time. It's of great opportunity to present to you the work done over the year. And I want to present to you the effect of seasonal variations and farming systems on the properties of tilapia gelatin extracted from scale. This work was actually sponsored by EU Zone 2020. It's part of the project to assist Africans to build a very resilient food systems. And as the co-authors are being shown on the screen, we have two lecturers from Western Helsinki in Finland, and the other research scientists from CSR, also for scientific industrial research. So within my 20 minutes, we'll have to go through introduction to the. And to begin with, we have seen that one of the topical issues, the hot issues that everybody is talking about is about climate change. That has been a threat to our living on this world. If you look at the increasing rates of environmental serious issues affecting our water, food, energy, and that the production or the generation of this waste alone is estimated to be around 380,000 billion tons that has been generated or produced or that is being managed in 2018. And I believe that for 5 years now, the figure has really gone up. And in Ghana, like this, we carry out a survey in 2022. And the conclusions, we find out that only 20% of fish, especially the waste that are generated from the sea waste, processed. 20%, 80% of the remainings either used directly or being unprocessed. And so we ask ourselves, what can we do with all these issues that we have with our waste being generated, into our systems, be it river streams, be it into our systems, be it into our environments. What can we do? What can we do? So that is the question that everybody is asking. So one of the ways that we can able to that waste, especially coming from the factory industries, that's the fish waste or seafood, is to convert them into fish gelatin. And fish gelatin is one of the popular raw material, in many industries. You talk of agric industries, cosmetic industries, food manufacturing companies, photographics and then pharmaceutical companies. So it has a wide range of applications in some of these industries. And so where do we actually, how do we even produce it? We normally get it from the waste of the seafood. We talk about the bones, the scales, the skins, and the viscera. So if you look at the structure, it's been shown over the decades, the structure of the fish gelatins. For those who are like with this structure, it's just basically telling about the structure of the gelatins. And we have both the NH, the amide sites, and the carboxylic sites. These are the functional groups that works together or that interacts together to build a strong, gelatins. As in our systems, that we have the DNA and the RNA, and these are the systems that work together to help us to stay stronger. So likewise in this, the raw materials like gelatin, you have this kind of structure that helps the gelatin to function very well. So if you look at the parent material, the parent material of the structure, you realize that it is a collagen. We call this collagen. And for you to be able to get the fake gelatin, you have to break down this collagen. That is, so you have to break down this collagen to get the fish gelatin, because the fish gelatin is embedded in this collagen, called like a triple helix. Triple helix, provides a cohesive or protective environments, So in order for us to get or extract the gelatin, we have to break it down before we can able to get it. And we have so many ways of doing that. One of them is thermal, physical base. The thermal is to apply heat, so that we can able to break down the collagen to get the gelatin. The second one is the chemical. Chemical is also to use either acid or maybe base to break down those bonds to get the gelatin. Last one is the enzymatic one. It's also the same as, but with regards to the thermal, and then the thermal, usually it affects its functional properties. So it's not going to give us a very good, yield or good products when we use it in our food processing. Also, the enzymatic one is expensive. So that is why we tend to resort to the chemical one, which is very cheap and also safe one as well. Because of course we don't use all the chemicals, but we use the one that is food safe or that is recommended, WHO or maybe WHO. So during the extractions, we realized that there are certain factors that really affect the functional properties of the gelatins that we have. One of them is extraction temperature, time, and then the pH. The other one also about the thermodynamic differences or the temperature differences and the seasonal variations. And most of the work has been done, especially in areas like fish species like silver carp. Some research that was carried out both winter and the summer, and they realized that it has a strong connections between the seasonal variations and the thermodynamic differences. Its functional properties such as the viscosity, the stability, the melting point, and low concentration. I just want to take a few minutes to explain how do we experience this, especially for those who are on the men. If you look at yogurts that we enjoy so much, you realize that the most raw material that we use is this gelatin. In fact, when you take it, then you are eating it, you have this kind of mouthfeel. It is that gelatin that gives the mouthfeel. So during the extractions, when the temperature is so high, it tends to affect this melting properties, or we call like a melting point. It's that point that the gelatin the yogurt begin to melt, and then you have this taste, a sweet taste or something like that. So I mean that's so we some of these things we try to find the best way to be able to modulate or regulate or control the functional properties, so that we're able to have the good qualities of those properties that we want to enjoy. We have seen that most of these tests has been related to this, extraction temperatures, time, pH. Where other areas like seasonal variations and the farming systems, have not been touched. So our focus our focus was to look at the seasonal variations in the farming systems on Nile tilapia. We decided to focus on Nile tilapia because it has become one of the fastest growing business in Africa, especially in Ghana, because if you look at a report in 2010 to 2012, it was saying that the production alone has increased from 2,000 metric tons to 30,000 metric tons. That is within the 2 years. And I believe that within this time, the production has gone up. It usually takes place in the lagoons, rivers, wild farms, and then cultured farms. If you look at these things, if you look at all this production that has gone up, then you ask yourself, so where are this waste going, especially the skills? So that's the reasons why it really motivates us to, engage in this research, because we ask ourselves, with all this production that is going up, where is the waste going, especially the skills? So we're trying to find out ways of reducing the waste, so that we can be able to add, thereby strengthens the circular economy. Circular economy is basically to the waste that has been generated, the circular economy. So now we have found a way to improve our circular economy, thereby reducing the environmental footprint in Ghana. So the work was to basically to determine the impact of seasonal variations and then farming systems on the functional properties and then the physical properties of gelatin that is obtained from the scales of Nile tilapia using sequential or double acid alkali techniques. What exactly means is that we are only using the acid and alkali, so that we're able to extract the gelatin from the scales of the Nile tilapia. We also use, in order for us to also predict a model, which is a new concept, for these studies, as to look at the relationships between the functional properties and then the yields that will be obtained. So, like I said, we use the chemical, method. The chemical method was the acid and alkali one. It uses 0.5 molar sodium hydroxide with 0.4% of sulfuric acid at 60 degrees, 60 degrees, and then for 6 hours to digest the scales. This is just to help us to break the bond that I've already explained, so that we can able to get the availability of the gelatin from the scales, from the collagen. And after that, we also purify. This is just to make sure that we get all the superfluous or maybe other impurities from the fish scales. Then finally, we freeze dry to get our gelatin. So just gelatin is coming from the waste that we saw. And this is the beauty of science, making something new from the waste. So the analysis that we carry out was one, we carry out the stability of how clear, how the solution or the gelatin solution look like. That's basically our stability. We also look at the functional properties of it. Then we also check the color of the quality of the gelatin extracted. We also look at plasmic compositions. Plasmic is about the protein, the moisture, the ash, the fat, and these are the things that we eat. We all know protein, we all know the moisture, we know the ash, we all know the fat. So these are the things that we basically enjoy all the time. We also do that and that. And we also, in order for us to look at the changes in the structure of the gelatin, we carried out transform infrared, spectra or the analysis to determine those changes. This is just telling us that the bonds that exist between the structures, which we appreciate that the digestions that we apply, the chemicals that we apply, we have seen some breaking of the bonds. So we are certain that we are going to get our gelatin from the collagen. Lastly, we also look at the crystal structures. The crystal structures, we also employed X-ray diffraction. When you go to the hospital, we know X-ray just to determine the test. But in this case, we are looking at the changes that took place when we apply the chemicals to break those like bonds, the collagen bonds to get the gelatin. So we carry out the test in both rainy season and then the dry season and different farming system. The farming system were the farms that were cultured, then or the farm or cultured or the wild. The wild is like on controlled environments. let me say those like those in the riverside and something like that. So we want to look at this, these parameters on the quality and the functional properties of the gelatin. Then the only source that we use were the peer scales because the huge quality of the results. We saw that the fish gelatin that were extracted from the Nile tilapia in the wild type had a very strong bond. Around 1,650 centimeter super -1, and this is around a strong amount of the triple helix. It contains a strong amount of the triple helix. If you look at also this one to around the MIA, you realize that the extracted gelatin from the wild type, the wild fish gelatin type, had a broad base of the hydrogen bonds, and that tells you that the gelatin that were obtained from the wild type is stronger than the rest of the samples that were obtained as compared to the one that were obtained from the farmed or the cultured one or the controlled fish gelatin. When you also look at the XRD, this something similar also happened. You realize that in the XRD, it has the angle of 11, it has angle of 21, it has angle of 29, it has angle of 31. And usually, according to the XRD pattern of fish gelatin, it must contain 8 angle, and 8 angle tells you how strong the bonds in the collagens are. If you look at it from the farm, all these angles represent the farm. In this case, the farm has higher figures or has a higher angle. It tells you that the higher the angle, the disordered the structures. This has a direct impact on the yield. If you look at the yield, you realize that the gelatin obtained from the wild type has a low yield because the bonds were so stronger, to break them during the digestions using the chemicals. But if you look at the farm, the one that obtained the gelatin that was obtained from the farm, the gelatin, the yield was so high. It tells you that the bonds existed between the structures were so weak, so we're able to break it easily, and that's why we're able to have kind of increase of the yield. When you compare the ash content, the fat content, in fact, if you look at the fish gelatin, the quality of it, we look at the moisture content and the protein. That's the most important aspect of it. The other parameters like ash, fat, they represent the other inorganic substance or other waste. So in order for us to be able to ensure that we have a quality of the fish gelatin, we have to reduce the level of the waste. And if the ash content, you see that the gelatin that was extracted from the fish gelatin from the farm had a low amount of the ash, that is 1.19 against the wild type, which is as high as 1.46 and 3.18. When you also look at the fat content, it has a 0.84. So it tells you that the gelatin that was obtained from the farm has a low amount of the contaminants because the farm were controlled, they were limited as compared to the one that were not controlled. So for the turbidity, we also carry out the turbidity to look at how clear or how quality the gelatin. With the turbidity, we can compare to maybe pra, and we all know the color of pra. If water is supposed to be colorless, we have seen that our river has become like a tea. In the same scenarios are occurring here. We have seen that the gelatin that we obtain from the farm has a higher turbidity, but in this case, the high turbidity indicates, the clarity of the solution. It tells you that the solution is more clear the farm, it has 98.30 as against 94.60 or 94.55. And then the color, the L stand for the lightness, then the A stand for the reddish. So for the fish gelatin that we obtained from the farm, is that it has higher, contents of the clarity as compared to the one obtained from the wild types. It once again affirmed the fact that those obtained from the farm, they were controlled, or they were, weighted as compared to the that they have a free range and they were exposed to contaminants, and that is why they had high amount of reddish in the quality of the gelatin. So for us to look at how good or how better functional properties of the gelatin look like, we also carry out the melting, the gelatin temperatures, the viscosity. Like I said, when you enjoy yogurt, you realize that when you put in your mouth, you have this kind of mouthfeel. That tells you that the yogurt is tasty or it is bad. So these are the properties that gives you that, yeah. These are the properties.
As I said, we are constrained by time, so you'll be muted when your time is up. I'm sorry about that. Please, you will take a question. Anyone with a question? Okay, then we go straight to the panel.
Yes, my name is Paraiso Khalil from Benin Republic, but I am in China for my PhD.
Okay.
Hello?
Hello.
Yes. Please, brother, my question is, which material you use to measure turbidity and viscosity? Hello? Hello?
Hello. Millicent, please, could you unmute Dr. Eben?
Host, please, can you unmute him? Dr. Eben, I think he can unmute himself. Dr.
Okay.
Eben.
Can I be heard?
Yes, please.
Okay.
Yes.
So my brother, thank you for your question. We can go back to the materials. What I used to measure stability was spectrophotometer at wavelength of 620 nanometer. So we use a spectrophotometer. It's a very common instrument that is in the lab. So we can use to determine the stability of the solution. And for the viscosity, we also use viscometer to measure the viscosity of the solution. So that's what we use. This instrument are very common.
Thank you. Okay, so we move to the panelists. We have Professor Michael Ashmon Appiah available now. We want him to speak first.
Thank you so much.
Okay.
Please, can you hear me?
Yes, please.
Okay, thank you so much. That is a very nice presentation, although the time is a little limited for him. Yes, he is giving so much insight about fish farming and all these things. Once the topic is about sustainability, my first question or the question I have for him is, how do you relate this, your gelatin and all the chemicals you have made mention of, help us to protect the human life, because it is fish that we are eating, and how it is also going to help protect our water bodies and our environment as a whole. Because it looks a little technical for me, I might not have so much in-depth knowledge about your presentation, but I can hear some chemicals and all these things in there. So how can this help us to protect our environment and also protect our human lives? Because once the fish is harvested, we may eat. All right, thank you.
Can I respond to that one by one?
Please hold on. We'll call on the second panelist. We'll take all the questions, then you answer them at once.
Okay,
Dr. Isaac.
Let me write the questions.
We'll take all suggestions and questions from the panelists, then you answer them together. Okay. So Dr. Isaac Safo.
Honorable Ebenezer, that was a nice presentation. I have two questions. Are there any technical issues which are associated with producing fish gelatin for human consumption? That is my first question. And then the second one is, did you look at some of the interactive effects of farming systems and seasonal variations? Thank you.
Thank you. So, Dr. Mavis Edu-Jemfi.
And I hope it's a published work already. The findings, but also it's relevant to the aquaculture.
Dr. Mavis, I can't hear you. Voice is low.
All right, so it's a nice presentation though, and since it's a published work already, these findings will be relevant to the aquaculture and then the food industry. Okay. My question here is that how can you optimize the gelatin extraction and then processes to enhance its properties and also expand its uses? So the gelatin that you use, how are you going to optimize the extraction and then processes to enhance its properties and then expand its uses? Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Ebenezer. Now you can answer all the questions.
Thank you so much for the opportunity to respond to your queries. First of all, let me respond to Professor. The chemicals that I was making a reference to was not like going to harvest the fish with the chemicals. No, we only use the chemicals during our extraction in the lab or maybe in the manufacturing company. We don't use the chemicals we don't like to harvest the fish, no. What we need, just the fish waste, the raw material. That's what we need. So we don't use the chemicals at the harvesting level. We just need the waste from the farmers. That's what we need. So we get our raw materials for the production. Then we come to the lab or maybe the manufacturing companies. Is it? And even during the processing and extraction, we are being mindful of the concentration level, the amount of the chemicals that we apply. We work within the WFO, food safety limit, or FAO, Food and Agriculture Organization's limit, to ensure that we are doing the right things. Our qualities, properties of the gelatins are okay. And if you can see from the results that the results are on point. If the high level of the chemicals would have, revealed the level of the results that we obtained, and that tells you that concentration was higher based on the results that we are getting. And it will disclose us. Actually, showcase that indeed application was high. It will reveal if the concentrations are high. All the figures that we had within the quality limits that has been set by the quality standard group manufacturing of Europe, so far as the gelatin industries are concerned. These are the materials that we enjoy all the time. everything that we do is our gelatin. The second question is on sustainability. So we are looking at limit use of the concentrations. So we ensure that. Second question, the second question from Osafo about technical issues concerning consumption of the gelatin.
No, the technical issues associated with producing fish gelatin for human consumption. Yeah.
Oh, so can you be specific?
Yeah, I want to know if there are any. Are there any possibly linked, the ones which are linked to odor or whatsoever?
Okay. Okay. So if you look at the physical processes, the data, when you look at the data, you see the color, the stability. These are the critical assessments of the quality of the gelatin. And you know, they have this world body that make sure that the standard of the gelatin is maintained regardless of wherever you find yourself. So they have the parameters, and you have to fall within the parameters. If you fall outside the parameters or you are upper, it means that it's regarded as non-conform. But if you look at the data, where all our data are within, you know, the technical issues are there because, of course, we are using a raw material that is coming from, that is a waste. So you have to make sure that anything like inorganic substance, anything like contaminant are being removed because it's going straight to the human stomach. So you have to make sure that everything is within standard has been set so far the expectation are controlled. The other question is about interactions.
Yeah.
Yes. In fact, that has been our recommendation, and that would be our future work. I made a recommendation towards that. If anybody who is going to carry out that, they have to look at the seasonal interactions between the two, either the farming, the wild, and then the dried. They have to interactions. That's a recommendation that we made in future. Okay. I'm currently doing reading on starch. Could have complete that work, but because I'm doing starch now, which is also another very important area. That's why. So, but okay. We take up. Sure. And also, optimizations. Yes, that is also part of the recommendations. We also, the reason why we had a low yield is because limited of funds. They had wanted to optimize so that we can increase the range of the temperatures, the pH, and those things. But because we are limited of funds, so we optimize that. But it's also part of the recommendations, for the future way to be done.
Okay. Thank you, Dr. Ebenezer Asiaman. I admit that we are far behind time and we apologize for that, but we have just a final presenter. We just call on Mr. Ejenim Godfred Boateng to give us the last presentation.
Okay. Can you please hear me? Can you hear me?
Yes, please. Yes. We can hear you.
Okay, because of time factor, I have to rush through the presentation. I'm Godfred, and I'm here to present about the effect of replacement of fish meal with poultry byproduct meal and Hermentia elucin larvae meal, respectively, on the growth, enzyme activities, and immunity of giant river prawn. So first, I'll do the introduction. I'll talk about the main content of the research, the experiment design, and results, discussion, and conclusion. So, Macrobrachium rosenbergi is also known as the giant river prawn or giant freshwater prawn, and this is it. It is found throughout the world, but mostly at the tropical and subtropical area of the Indo-Pacific region, India, South Asia, and North Australia. And it has many biological advantages. That's why it was chosen for this experiment. It can grow in captivity, grow in freshwater or low brackish water conditions, relatively large, can grow very fast, and it can feed on both plants and animals. So the first ingredient, which is fish meal. Fish meal is the ultimate or the primary source of protein for aquatic organisms. It's highly nutritious, palatable protein source for aquatic organisms. So mainly is the ultimate protein source. And the second ingredient is the poultry byproduct meal. This is the poultry byproduct meal. The source of protein with high biological value, with digestibility coefficient of 82% and adequate chemical composition. So this is the poultry byproduct meal. That's the part of the poultry that humans don't consume. So we blend it or grind it, and we add it with other ingredients to make pellets. It's high because we don't need it. We can get more of this ingredient, and the nutritional composition is that close to the fish meal, and it's very, very low in price compared to the fish meal. So other researches done by scholars, these studies, Nengas and his colleagues were able to replace up to 100% and 75% in sea bream, up to 100% in red sea bream. Gilbert Carp 2, it was able to replace 50% when Yang and his colleagues did the experiment. Another research was also done when turkey meal was used by Munsinich and his colleague. It was able to replace the fish meal 100%. So the third ingredient, that's the black soldier fly or the Hermetia losing love meal. So the Food and Agriculture Organization has highlighted the potential use of insects for food in animal feed. And black soldier fly is one of the promising source of insect. This is the animal, and this is the larvae. So we dry the larvae and we blend it and add it to other ingredients to produce the pellets. The advantage of this ingredient is it has essential amino acid closer to that of fish meal and has good source of minerals and vitamins. And this ingredient is also lower in price compared to the fish meal. Another interesting aspect is the antibacterial activity of this ingredient. So research also done by this other research on rainbow trout. This is the rainbow trout, and it was able to replace 75% of the fish meal in this experiment. Another experiment done in Atlantic salmon, it was able to replace in Atlantic salmon too. In golden catfish, it was able to replace up to 48%, but 25% being the maximum or the optimum replacement group. So the question now is, why replace fish meal? If fish meal is the ultimate or the primary source of protein for fish or the aquatic animals, why try to replace it? So aquaculture is growing. You can see from this graph that it's growing. The different colors shows the different aquatic organisms. And this is about 20 decades research. So you can see from it ends in 2023. You can see that steadily it's increasing. That's the aquaculture industry. And this has brought pressure on the marine ecosystem because they have to harvest aquaculture, harvest the fish for the aquaculture industry. So the second graph shows, the green shows the aquaculture industry and the blue shows the capture fisheries. So you can see that the aquaculture industry is gradually increasing, steadily increasing very, very much. And they have to capture the fish to meet the demand of these aquaculture industries, which is putting much pressure on the marine ecosystem, not just the marine, and the freshwater ecosystem too. So therefore, this demand has, when there's high demand, prices also goes up. And for over the years, the prices of fish meat has increased so much that some farmers can't even afford to buy the fish meal. And you know, aquaculture, most of the income that we put in the aquaculture comes from feed. So if we are able to minimize the price of the feed, if we are able to do away with the fish meal, that means the price of the feed will go down, and definitely fish or other aquatic animals product will get lower prices. So this takes me to the main content of my research. So the main content is to try to replace the fish meal with poultry byproduct meal or the Hermetian and losing larvae meal. That's the black soldier fly. And in so doing, we should be able to enhance the prawn, the growth, as in fish meal. These ingredients should be able to enhance their growth, the digestive enzyme, and also the immune system of the prawn. So I'll take you through my experimental design. So as we said, we bought the prawn from the hatcheries, then the 3 ingredients. So the poultry byproduct meal was divided into 4 groups. That's the 25% replacement group. We try to replace it, the fish meal, 25% with the poultry byproduct, and 50%, 75%, and total replacement. That's the 100% replacement group. So with the black soldier fly, but that one was 20, 40, and 60. So after this, they were subjected to 8 weeks feeding trials, 8 weeks. And so after the 8 weeks, there was a growth and samples were taken. We took the hemolymph, we took the hepatopancreas and the intestine and the whole body of the shrimp or of the prawn, sorry. So with the hemolymph, we did the SOD, MDA, AKP, and the ACP. With the whole body collection, we did the nutrient content, moisture, food protein, food fats, and ash. And with the hepatopancreas and the intestine, the digestive enzyme analysis of trypsin, lipase, and amylase were analyzed. So after all this, the values that we get, we subject to the ANOVA and determine the growth, immunity, and the digestive enzymes of these organisms. So this is my feed formulation for the poultry byproduct meal. So you can see when the fish meal is decreasing, the poultry byproduct meal will be increasing. That's the ones in the red. And also this is the formulation for the Hermetian losing larvae meal. Same. So the experiment was carried on in Huzhou University in Zhejiang province, China. And these were the tanks that I used for the experiment. So there were 32 tanks, that's 300 liter polyethylene white tanks. And we filled water to 250 liter. That's like 2/3 of the tank. And each tank had 50 randomly selected prawn distributed. And before the field trial began, we acclimatized the prawn for 2 weeks. So within the 2 weeks, we fed them with the commercial feed. Then after the 2 weeks, started with the feed trial. So the feed and data collection, each diet was randomly assigned to 4 tanks. So each of the groups, if you take poultry byproduct meal, the 25%, 50, each of the groups were in 4 replicates. 4 replicates. And initial weight of the prawn of each tank were determined and recorded. The feeds were, so the feed that were used to feed them were weighed based on the collective combined weight of the prawn in each tank. The prawn were fed on 2 visual satiation. These are organisms that feed very slow. So you have to take time. You have to give them the food small for them to eat. So you have to be careful when you are feeding them. And after they are feeding for some hours, the fecal matter were siphoned from the bottom of the tank. Water change, like 30 to 50% of the water. I don't have to change much because it can change the temperature of the water and it will affect the organisms. So the hemolymph were taken from the prawn. Because of time, because I've gone through the technical route. So we use the hemolymph for the SOD, the alkaline phosphatase, the acid phosphatase, and everything. And the dissection too, we cut the tail and carefully we took the intestine from there. You have to cut the tail and carefully take it's very delicate, so you have to be careful when taking it out. We took the intestine from the prawn. And from the carapace cavity of each prawn, we opened and we took the hepatopancreas from the dorsal region of the carapace of the prawn for analysis. So the digestive enzyme, we use the hepatopancreas because it produces the trypsin, lipase, and amylase, and we determine the amount in the organism after the feed trial. And the whole body composition too, we took some of the organism, whole of the organism for the nutritional composition of the prawn. So after everything, it was subjected to the ANOVA, one-way ANOVA for analysis. And the results and conclusion, first, I'll talk of the poultry byproduct meal. So you can see from the for the final weight, from the control to the total replacement, that's the 100 replacement, there was a steady decline in growth, that's the weight, with the 100% being the least in weight. So was the weight gain rate and the specific growth rate. So the 100% replacement group had the least of these parameters. But when you go to the survivor, there were no significant change in the survival rate. Effect of the nutrients. The crude protein moisture, there were no significant difference in all of them when compared to the control. Because we want to change the fish meal, which is the control. So we compare everything to the fish meal. And the intestinal digestive enzyme too, that was amazing. From the control, you can see that there is a steady increase in the 25%. But after the 25%, there was a decrease in all the replacement group. And so were the other trypsin and lipids. But for those ones, there were no significant difference, only the amylase that had the significant difference. So I'll go to the immunity, the SOD MDA. For these ones too, there were no significant difference in the parameters. However, you can see from the control of the SOD, from the control, it was increasing, but there were no significant difference. The ACP2 was decreasing, but the decrement was not significant. So in conclusion, poultry byproduct meal can replace up to 75%. And there will be no adverse effects on the growth performance. However, 100% replacement is possible when the digestive enzyme and immunity is concerned. So I'll go to the second experiment. The first one is published, this one is not published, and this is the impact on the growth performance. So this one too is almost like the first one, where the control was higher, but the 60% replacement group was lower. So was the survival rate, but with the specific growth rate, there were no significant difference. Effect on nutrient content too, there were no significant difference in all the parameters. In the digestive enzyme too, you can see from the control to the 60% replacement group with the amylase and the trypsin, it was increasing. However, the increment was not significant, so it was not taken into any. The lipase, however, was decreasing with the replacement groups. And the effect on the immunity, the SOD, AKP, and when these values shoot up, that means the health of the prawn has been compromised. And for God being so good, there were no significant difference in all the parameters. So this one was also concluded that Hermentia and losing loving milk can replace up to 60%. That's the replacement, all the replacement group that we did can be replaced with what? The Hermentia and losing loving milk. So the general conclusion, poultry byproduct milk can be replaced up to 75%. Hermentia losing loving milk can be replaced up to 60%. So this means that if we are able to replace this, the price of eventually the prices of these fish or aquatic organisms, their meal, the prawn, the price of their feed will drop. And it will be a good thing for our country. And recommendation, I recommend that because we didn't do up to the molecular level. We can do more research can be done on the molecular level, as the proteomics and the other things. So thank you for your attention.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Ejenim Godfrey Boateng. So we'll take question. We'll take a question, sorry.
I have one. I have one question.
Okay, please go ahead.
Mr. Jenny Boateng, thanks for your presentation. I want to do a quick comparison here. Looking at the size of the prawn as against the size of the size of the redfish. Based on this data, could one more like compare in terms of proportion the quantum of say poultry meal that can be fed to the redfish to be able to get a proportionate should I say measure of quantities for that one too, because basically the shrimp is smaller than the redfish. So can one use proportion to project into the fish arena? I just want to be sure on that.
No, you can't use proportion. That's why I gave other researchers their results. It's based on the organism's ability to utilize that ingredient. So there are biological, how do you call it? The other biological entities that will help the organism to utilize that that ingredient. So it doesn't depend on proportion.
Okay, thank you. And a quick follow-up. Since this organism can survive in brackish water, would the properties be the same as that for tilapia, for instance?
I don't get your question.
So this prawn can survive in brackish water, and tilapia is also known to equally survive in brackish water. Now, the environment looks the same. So in terms of their feeding habits and all that, there may be some similarities. I also want to be sure that would these qualities look like the same for tilapia as well?
It has to be experimental upon. As I researched, I didn't have any articles that of tilapia. It can be the same, it cannot be, depending on how it is able to utilize it. You know, this organism is omnivorous. It has wide range of feeding. And tilapia is not all that omnivorous. Please, can you get it? So
I do.
It can utilize, it may be able to utilize it or not, but I didn't find any research about it.
Thank you, that's all.
Okay, thank you. So we take comments and questions from the panelists. The first is Dr. Mavis Edujemfi.
All right, thank you, Mr. Jenny Boateng, for your presentation. That is an interesting topic, replacing fish meal with feed. Okay, my question here is, since you're going to do a replacement, it means that there should be a large production of the PBM. So how can you address the potential environmental
Please come again.
impacts?
I can't hear you well.
Okay, can you hear me now?
Yeah, I can hear you.
All right, I earlier recommended you for your presentation, and it's an interesting topic. And I said that since you are going to do a replacement, then you should think of large-scale production. So my question here is, how are you going to address the potential environmental impacts of large-scale production of PBM and its use in the aquaculture?
The poultry byproduct meal.
Yes.
So there are in Ghana, for instance, there are a lot of poultry farms, and there are a lot of slaughtering house. So maybe we can get that large quantity from them, and it can even save the environment. This is also a way of saving the environment, because they discard most of these parts of the poultry. So we can collect that, make good use of it, and feed our aquatic organisms. Please, have I answered you all?
Yeah, I'm okay.
Okay, thank you.
Thank
you. Dr. Isaac Safo, please, you are next.
Okay, thank you. Honorable Ejanim, that was a nice and tentative presentation. I have one question for you, but then before I move on to the question, in your presentation or in your submission, you made mention of, and God being so good. Can you tell us what God actually had to do with what you were trying to put up?
Because it was able to replace, there were no adverse effects in the immunity. Okay, so that means it can replace the fish meal.
so how do you relate that to God here? You said God being so good. Okay, that was just by the way. Did you encounter any difficulty or during your experimental process?
There were a lot of difficulties, especially with the tank, the usage of the tank. You know, it was just a normal tank. It was not automated. There's no running water, so you have to be changing the water very often. And another encounter was the prawn. They undergo cannibalism. And this whereby you are doing feed experiments. So they can feed themselves, they can eat themselves. That will affect your results. So you have to keep close eyes on them so that they will not feed on themselves.
Oh, okay. So would you are there any study opportunities that you would recommend that people who are interested in aquaculture or people interested in fishes can actually pursue moving forward?
Yeah, like one of my brother just asked, can you use this? I think maybe you can use it in the tilapia farm.
Okay,
you can
so,
use,
in your case, it could be replicated using different species, right?
Yeah, because many species, from my presentation, many species have been able to utilize it, some even up to the 100%. So if we try it in the tilapia and the catfish in Ghana, or even we can even start with the prawn in Ghana.
Okay, and God will surely be good there, right? Okay, that's all. Thank you.
Thank you.
To our presenters, they deserve an applaud for an exceptional presentation and dedication to advancing knowledge. And to our panelists, your expertise and dedication have made this session both informative and engaging. We say we are grateful for the opportunity to learn from your insights. So we take final comments from our chairman.
Okay, thank you all, especially for the presenters for opening our eyes on various fields. We also thank the panelists for giving vivid and then good input in the presentation that were given. So what we have seen today is that almost everything that was said was linked to the local development of Africa and especially Ghana. So yes, it is very important that our research has this local modeling or local mindset. I hope that the following presenters that will come tomorrow will follow suit, and then to open our minds and our eyes to what we can do to improve our continent. Thank you all.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, for leading us through this session, for leading us through today's session. We are grateful. So we call on our National President, Honorable Stephen Safo, for the announcement.
Okay, thank you very much, Dr. Millicent. Please, can I be here?
Yes, please.
Okay, thank you so much. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And then thank you so much, our honorable, I always call them honorable because they are all my seniors. And then I know all of them very well, the panelists. You've been doing a great job. I salute you, our seniors. Please, there are some few announcements I would like to pass across. God willing, tomorrow, Afba continues. And tomorrow's activity is such that it's going to be a 3-in-1 activity. In that, sorry, a 2-in-1, let me put it that way, that will make it more simple. A 2-in-1 activity in that the normal Afba will continue like it has been coming on, or like we've been doing for the past 2 days. So our presenters will come, guest speakers will come, then we'll be ending with an award that we call the Academic Excellence Award. So tomorrow we'll be ending our Afba with the crowning of some special people in the bachelor's category, master's category, PhD category. They would like to also see the best male researcher across board in China, most influential member, most outstanding member, and the most impactful alumni to NUGS-CHINA and the Ghanaian students at large. So tomorrow, please, let's make time and come in our numbers to support our own who have been able to go through all these stages of screening, and voting has also been casted on them. Finally, God willing, on Saturday, there's a special activity that I would like to draw all of us our attention to it. I know we all, one way or the other, are connected to NUGS-CHINA, and then we pass through the 4 corners of China schooling. We know the challenges that students pass through. Some of us are were scholarship students, so we don't feel it well. But when you look at your left or right, if you think through it, you know that those who are not on scholarship go through a lot in schooling in China. So NUGS-CHINA, for the first time in its history, would like to raise funds to support all students across board. Like we would like to help with what our PhD candidate, Dr. Alimo, said. He said some of these researchers that they are doing, we all saw what he presented. It is so like practical, it's applicable, but he needs sponsors, he needs money, he needs support to make all these things that we are doing. As our Prof mentioned, Professor Alabi mentioned today, that what is NUGS-CHINA doing to make sure that all these things that we are spending time doing doesn't stay in the books or doesn't become just a mere talk, but what are the action plans and what are the actionable measures that we ought to do to make them come into effect or for all to see. The root cause of all these things are finance. So NUGS-CHINA would like to admonish all that please, on Saturday, God willing, between the hours of 7 to 9 p.m. China time, 11 to 1 a.m. GMT time, we are going to raise funds to support the Ghanaian students, of which we've dubbed NUGS-CHINA Financial Empowerment, helping the Ghanaian students. We are looking at so many angles: research support, welfare assistance, and then we all know that we did a pickup for students. And moreover, this is where that's one thing that moved us so much, that we want the research works that are being done here to be supported, sponsored, and make sure they come into reality. So please, let's all come as we've come today. Come, there's nothing too small. No amount is too small. Anything that you can give will be welcome. So God bless us for making time for today's section as well. Dr. Millicent, please, you can take over. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. President. On behalf of the organizing committee, NUGS-CHINA, and all the attendees from Ghana and our sister countries, I extend our heartfelt thanks to our chairman, the guest speakers, panelists, presenters for their outstanding presentations and their invaluable contributions to this conference. Thank you all. And I would like you to scan the QR code in the chat if you haven't scanned to register your attendance. Also, we'll take our closing prayer from Jonathan Tay, Honorable, sorry. He's a National FC.
Please let us pray. Once again, we thank you, Daddy Lord, for a wonderful program today, day 2. We commit the evening into your hands. As we are leaving, we are not leaving your sight. Continue to protect and guide us. When we meet tomorrow, we'll give you all the glory and honor. These are many we ask. In your name we have prayed. Amen.
Amen. Thank you all for coming. The program has ended.
Thank you. See you tomorrow.
And I'm your MC for the evening. Millicent Selassie Appiah, out.
Thank you, Chairman, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Doug. Thank you, everyone.